Chapter 169. Yi Huanyan subconsciously lowered her head to look at the scarf around her neck. At one glance, she felt that the scarf seemed to be stained with the light of the top student in the room just now. She hurriedly took off the scarf and hung it on the hanger at the door. "I'll return it to Ling Zhan when we eat later." Only then did Ling Han's expression soften a little. He coughed dryly. "What did Ling Zhan say to you just now?" At the mention of this, Yi Huanyan's expression stiffened. She couldn't tell him that she was crushed by the top student and then fled in front of him. It was embarrassing just thinking about it. Nothing. Ling Han's eyes were cold as he sized up Yi Huanyan. "He's just a child. What can he say?" This sentence made him feel quite satisfied. A child? Wasn't he just a little brat? He sneered. The words that he wanted to say to Yi Huanyan were immediately suppressed. His sullen anger ended without a cause. But a certain person who was treated as a little brat didn't think so. When a boy first fell in love in his teens, he was eager to grow up and protect the girl he loved. Obedient and sensible people like Ling Zhan were no exception. Ever since she accepted the music box that Ling Zhan gave to Yi Huanyan, he had become more and more attentive to her. No matter what novel or not, he would bring it to Yi Huanyan to ask for a trick. It was fine once or twice, but after a while, even Ling Li could see some tricks. He was secretly speechless that a brainless idiot like Yi Huanyan could always win the favor of a man. Ling Zhan had his own attitude to curry favor with him, but Ling Han's expression darkened day by day. If it was another man, it would be fine, but the person in front of him was his cousin. He felt a little helpless. When they had breakfast in the morning, all of them were present, except for Ling Zhan. When it was almost time to eat, Ling Zhan held a white sugar cake wrapped in oil paper and strolled into the living room like she was presenting a treasure. She directly gave the white sugar cake to Yi Huanyan, making Yi Huanyan a little embarrassed. "Sister Yan Yan, try this. I went to the city with Uncle Zhang to buy this morning. It tastes the same as the white sugar cake we ate when we were young. It's your favorite." "Thank you. Why don't we share it?" Yi Huanyan was smiling, but she looked a little embarrassed. Ling Zhan waved his hand. No need. You eat this. Also, I bought a lot. You eat first. I'll share it with everyone." Thus, the old lady beamed with joy. "Today, we are lucky to have Yan Yan." Xiao Zhan even went out early in the morning to buy white sugar cakes. There was laughter in the room. Ling Dongyu glanced at Ling Han, who was silent, and deliberately teased, "Yan Yan, why don't you wait for another 2 years? When Ling Zhan is older, you can move to the United States and be my daughter-in-law." As soon as he finished speaking, the old lady, Aunt Zhang, and a few servants all laughed. Ling Zhan blushed a little and avoided everyone's teasing gaze. Yi Huanyan spread her hands helplessly with a smile on her face. "Second uncle, can you not joke with me? If second aunt was born a few years later, you would be the same age as me." Everyone burst into laughter again. Except for Ling Dongyu, no one noticed that Ling Han, who was standing behind the old lady, had a face darker than the bottom of a pot. In the afternoon, the family chatted and drank tea in the living room. Ling Han came back from the front yard with 2 big food boxes in his hands. "Brother Ling Han." Ling Li was the first to see Ling Han. He put down the red string in his hand and rushed out. "What delicious food did you bring?" Ling Han glanced at Yi Huanyan and said lightly, "I bought some snacks from Wufang's shop, such as mung bean cakes and yellow dragon cakes. Everyone, try them this afternoon." Ling Dongyu was playing with Little Bean on the sofa. When he heard this, he tilted his head and glanced at him. "Doesn't Wufang's shop only open after the 15th every year? Where did you get such great ability?" "It's a coincidence." The 2 words made Ling Dongyu raise his eyebrows, but he did not ask any more questions. Plates of exquisite pastries were distributed in front of everyone. Ling Dongyu watched with interest as Ling Han divided the pastries from the old lady, then to him and Chris, then to Ling Zhan, then to Ling Li and Ling Shui. Finally, he was willing to distribute them to Yi Huanyan. Yi Huanyan looked indifferent. She thanked him and lowered her head to continue weaving her china knot. Seeing this, Ling Dongyu sighed slowly. He lowered his voice and whispered in Chris's ear, "In this state, our son still has a chance." Chris turned around and glared at him. "Keep your voice down." Although the old lady's ears were not very good, she saw Ling Dongyu's sneaky expression. "What are you whispering to your wife about? Tell us about it." Chris was slightly taken aback. Before she could reply, Ling Dongyu suddenly laughed. "I told Chris that when I was in elementary school, my class monitor and I sat at the same table. It was very funny." "Oh." The old lady's interest was piqued. "Tell us about it when you were in elementary school." Ling Dongyu handed the little bean to his wife and cleared his throat. "I was the class monitor in my primary school. Every time the class gave out stationery and books, he would always be the last to give them to my deskmate. He was very generous and would always bring food for the entire class, but he would always be the last to give them to my deskmate. Later on, one of the persimmons he brought was rotten, and my deskmate didn't get any. After that, the entire class found out about this and gradually started to isolate my deskmate. My deskmate started to get bullied by her classmates. Things like cleaning the toilets and taking out the trash were all assigned to her. However, my deskmate was especially unlucky. From primary school to high school, she had always been in the same class as the class monitor. This situation lasted for several years. What happened after that?" The old lady stared at him and asked. "My deskmate always thought that the class monitor hated her. Every time she saw him, she would avoid him." Ling Dongyu smiled. "Later, on the day of my deskmate's wedding, the class monitor drank too much and refused to leave. He said that he would take my deskmate away and was almost beaten by the groom. Only then did we know that he actually had a crush on my deskmate for many years." The old lady didn't understand. "Nonsense. If you like her, why would you bully her?" Ling Dongyu raised his eyebrows. He had been paying attention to Ling Han's expression. "I didn't bully her. Some people are like this. The more they like something, the more reserved they are. In order to give a piece of candy to someone, they would give a piece of candy to everyone around them. They are afraid that others will find out. Isn't that stupid?" The old lady laughed. "You little brat, I thought you were going to tell an interesting story. You just told a nonsense story about an idiot." The children all laughed along, and even Chris laughed. It was not because of the story, but because the old lady was laughing at his father without reservation. Ling Han was expressionless. He sat in the chair and drank tea and snacks. He seemed to be indifferent to the story. "It's not nonsense." Ling Dongyu's eyes flashed with a sly light. "Later, my deskmate married me." Chapter 170. When Ling Dongyu and Chris got married, they were still in high school. They hadn't reached the age to register their marriage, so they had a wedding first. Their classmates were also invited to the wedding. One of them got drunk and caused trouble, which became the laughingstock of everyone later on. The old lady was slightly stunned. She seemed to have recalled something and suddenly laughed. "You brat, you're so bad. So when you got married, the young man who drank too much was the class monitor you were talking about?" "I lived across from Chris's house. I didn't get the moon first. In the end, I still won." Ling Dongyu looked at Ling Han meaningfully, not hiding the smile in his eyes. The old lady thought that Ling Dongyu was going to tell the children about her early love history, but Yi Huanyan didn't hear anything wrong. Only Chris smiled apologetically at Ling Han, then turned around and glared at Ling Dongyu warningly. After dinner, Ling Dongyu leaned against the railing of the courtyard, a toothpick in his mouth. He didn't look like a father at all. Ling Han left the room full of laughter and walked over. "Second uncle, when are you leaving?" he asked. Ling Dongyu was not displeased, but he deliberately put on an exaggerated expression of heartbreak. "I've only been back for a few days, and you're already looking forward to me leaving. How annoying am I?" Ling Han was used to his frivolous behavior and frowned as he looked at him. "I was just asking casually." "You're not casually asking." Ling Dongyu smiled. His teeth shone with a white luster under the moonlight. I'm leaving this Saturday. Ling Han's tense expression relaxed a little. At the same time, a sly look appeared in Ling Dongyu's eyes. But I plan to leave Ling Zhan here. His school requires him to have voluntary work experience abroad. I think it's good to stay in the country. At least I can take care of him. Ling Han's face suddenly darkened. Are you serious? There is indeed such a thing. Whether I want to leave him here or not depends on how you answer my question. Ling Han frowned. His second uncle was an old fox. He lived up to his reputation. What do you want to know? Under the curtain of night, under the railing in front of the house, there were many shadows. The lanterns and window flowers swayed slightly in the wind, making rustling sounds. Then, Ling Dongyu's rare serious voice sounded. Have you ever thought about the person you're going to spend the rest of your life with in the future? What does that person look like? Ling Han frowned as he looked at Ling Dongyu. His facial features were not very clear under the dim light. 3 days later, in the morning, Ling Dongyu's family returned to America. When they left after breakfast, Yi Huanyan and Ling Han went to the airport to see them off. The old lady was not in good health and could not stand the torment. This was the first time she did not come out to see them off. Because there was a lot of luggage and a lot of people, Uncle Zhang drove one car, and Ling Han also drove another. When they arrived at the airport, there was still an hour before boarding time, which was enough time for them to chat a little more in the lobby. I sent you your skateboard yesterday. International logistics will probably take a little longer, but you should be able to receive it before the end of the month. If you get it, remember to let me know. After reminding Ling Li, Yi Huanyan handed the handbags in her hand to the two sisters. By the way, these are the snacks made by Wufeng Zhai. There are mung bean cakes, coconut cakes, and Ling Shui's favorite rose cakes. Anyway, I bought you a variety of flavors. They are vacuum sealed, so you should be able to pass the security check. If you can't eat the airplane meal, you can eat these. Ling Shui and Ling Li were two picky eaters. The plain meal would most likely not suit their taste. Listening to Yi Huanyan's nagging made his ears very uncomfortable. Ling Li glanced at Ling Zhan, who was standing far away, in boredom. Seeing that he was looking at Yi Huanyan with melancholy, Ling Li immediately sighed helplessly and turned around to ask, Hey, Yi Huanyan, if you don't consider age, what do you think of my brother as a woman's opinion of a man? Hearing this, Yi Huanyan blushed and whispered, Thank you so much for what happened at the restaurant. Ling Li was stunned for a moment. He sighed silently in his heart and rolled his eyes in disdain. I'm talking about Ling Zhan, big sister, you're really an idiot. Looking at Yi Huanyan's bashful look, Ling Li shuddered. He touched his arm where his hair stood on end, waved his hand repeatedly, and muttered as he looked back. I'm not going to talk to you anymore. It's impossible anyway. My poor brother's first love was strangled in the cradle just like that. Yi Huanyan ignored Ling Li's muttering. She felt a warmth in her palm and lowered her gaze slightly. Ling Shui's mouth was filled with the candy Yi Huanyan gave her. When she spoke, her mouth was full of the smell of strawberries. She was smiling and holding Yi Huanyan's hand. Sister Yan Yan, if you're free, come to my house to play, okay? Yi Huanyan patted her head and said, Okay. After saying hello to everyone and being kissed by the salivating little bean, she finally waved goodbye to the noisy family. After watching them line up and enter the security checkpoint, Yi Huanyan slowly exhaled and muttered to herself, The spring festival is over. Every year, this family came in a grand manner and left in a grand manner. It made people feel lonely. Ling Han tilted his head and lowered his gaze slightly to look at her. Let's go. Grandma is waiting to go home for lunch. Yi Huanyan was stunned. Oh, okay. After lunch, they had to pack up and move back to Ling Han's villa from the old mansion. This was because tomorrow, all the employees of the pleasure group officially started work, including the boss. This temporary peaceful coexistence of the Spring Festival was finally over. In the afternoon, when they left the old mansion with their luggage, Aunt Zhang stood in between the two stone lions and waved at them. Yi Huanyan sat in the car and watched Aunt Zhang become smaller and smaller. In the end, she became an invisible little black dot. Suddenly, she felt a sense of emptiness in her heart. During the spring festival, it was as if she was sitting in a time machine and flying back to the past. It was as if she had spent a rare and beautiful period of time. But now that the time machine was no longer working, those beautiful moments of hers were like Aunt Zhang just now. They were getting farther and farther away, smaller and smaller, and finally disappeared. Remember to submit the summary of the annual meeting tomorrow. Also, inform the department heads tomorrow morning to hold a year-end meeting. Just make some preparations. I will explain the specific problems to them at the meeting. Ling Han's voice suddenly sounded in the car. Yi Huanyan was stunned, as if she had not recovered from the spring festival atmosphere. When she saw Ling Han's eyes in the mirror, she suddenly sobered up. Oh, okay, I understand. Also, remember to inform the finance department to give out the red packets for the spring festival. Don't make any mistakes. Okay. Okay, I'll remember. Night gradually fell. The black car sped on the road leading to the main city. Ling Han's cold voice was heard in the car. He methodically instructed Yi Huanyan what to do the next day. Yi Huanyan vaguely felt that although Ling Han was instructing her in advance for the next day's work today, which was a little harsh for today, when they were still on holiday, his tone was very familiar and relaxed. Every task was also very detailed, and he was not as cold as before. It was as if the conversation was deliberately to break the stiff atmosphere in the car. Chapter 171. On the first day of work after the Spring Festival holiday, according to the company's rules, every employee should be given a red envelope. The red envelopes from the finance department had been prepared. Yi Huanyan sent an email to the heads of each department in advance, and they should go to the finance department early in the morning to receive the red envelopes from each department. As for the red envelopes from the secretaries, Yi Huanyan was in charge of them. Early in the morning, the people who sent and received the red envelopes were full of auspicious words. Even in the secretary's office, which was quiet all year round, there were rare sounds of laughter. After the meeting, Ling Han called Yi Huanyan to his office. At the company's meeting, they decided to have a long-term cooperation with Lai Baoli Jewelry, on the premise that Lai Baoli's new products would be on the market this season. The advertising department of Pleasure Media would first make a template for the endorsement and give it to them. This was something that had been discussed since before the Spring Festival. Mr. Li, the boss of Lai Baoli Jewelry, particularly favored Shang Enren. I'll leave this case to you. Ling Han looked up at Yi Huanyan with a calm expression. The planning department has handed in the plan, and the last round of amendments has been passed. No one knows better than you about the process and precautions of Lai Baoli Jewelry's endorsement. Yi Huanyan was stunned for a few seconds and nodded hesitantly. Ling Han was a person who would hardly bring his personal affairs to work. The relationship between her and Shang Enren was a bit subtle, but from the perspective of work, no one was more suitable for this advertising endorsement supervisor job than her. Report the specific work progress to Qiao Mu after work every day, and he will communicate with Lai Baoli Jewelry. Okay, got it. Yi Huanyan walked out of the office with the final draft of the planning case. When she walked into the secretary's office, she suddenly remembered that she hadn't done the repetitive mechanical work here for a long time. Before the Spring Festival, she had been busy with the annual meeting and had been running around outside. After the Spring Festival, she had accepted the endorsement shoot of Lai Baoli Jewelry. She was afraid that she had few opportunities to sit in the office. From the perspective of work, Ling Han transferring her outside was considered a business trip. If she were to be promoted in the future, her resume would be beautiful. It was a promotion for her. However, she couldn't help but look at it from a personal perspective. Perhaps Ling Han didn't want to see her, so he asked her to work outside. Not long after Yi Huanyan left, Ling Han dialed the office's landline, and Qiao Mu's voice came from the other end. How are the arrangements going? The location has been chosen. The renovation started today and will be completed in about a month. The record has been approved by the Industry and Commerce Bureau. We can announce the establishment of an independent subsidiary company in the advertising department at the end of next month. There's no need to make this matter public. Ling Han's voice was very calm. On the other end of the phone, Qiao Mu was silent for a few seconds before she understood. I understand. Although Pleasure Media was one of the top media companies, it focused on the cultivation of artists and the construction of a platform for the development of internet celebrities. As for the advertising and publicity, it had been handed over to outsourcing companies. The advertising and planning department of the group's headquarters was equivalent to a decoration. Now, if they wanted to establish an advertising department, they had to do a good job with the Baoli jewelry project in the future. Only then would it be necessary to establish an independent subsidiary company. Before hanging up the phone, Qiao Mu remembered that the manager of the subsidiary company had not been confirmed, so she asked, "By the way, President Ling, who do you want to follow up on the endorsement of Lai Baoli jewelry?" After the start of work tomorrow, Secretary Yi will report the progress of the work to you every day. Qiao Mu was slightly stunned. Is there a problem? Ling Han's voice came from the other end of the phone. No, I'm just a little surprised. Are you going to let Secretary Yi? Speaking of this, Qiao Mu hesitated and did not say it too bluntly. She took a deep breath and changed her way of speaking. I'll do my best to help her complete the endorsement plan of Lai Baoli jewelry. Ling Han responded, seeming to be very satisfied with her attitude. After hanging up the phone, Qiao Mu held the phone and frowned. Ling Han planned to separate the advertising and planning departments of Pleasure Media and set up a separate subsidiary company. In fact, he had been preparing for this for a year. Everyone, including him, thought that no matter what, the position of the advertising company's manager would be held by a senior and experienced person from the planning department. Qiao Mu also thought that there might be an unexpected surprise. After all, Ling Han had never been a person who played his cards according to common sense. He might arrange a newcomer, an elite recommended by a headhunting company, or other possibilities. However, he did not expect that it would be Yi Huanyan. He was afraid that he had to reconsider the importance of Yi Huanyan in Ling Han's heart from this matter. There were several different shooting plans for Lai Baoli's endorsement, including two options: a professional studio and an outdoor scene. Pleasure Media had a studio specially prepared for artists to take pictorial and photo shoots. The place was large enough, the equipment was complete, and the photographer was experienced enough. After checking the site, Yi Huanyan felt that it was not in line with her idea, so she contacted Ji Xiaoye to find a new studio and a new outdoor scene. However, on the day of the shooting, they encountered the first problem. Shang Enren did not agree to shoot outdoors. She insisted on shooting in the company's private studio on the first floor of Pleasure Media's building. Outdoor scene? Are you kidding me? I'll be recognized when I go out. How can you protect me? If I'm surrounded by a crowd, you won't be able to complete the shooting. Shang Enren's fierce voice came from the nanny van. The van had been parked in the underground parking lot of Pleasure Media Group. She only gave Yi Huanyan two options. The first was that she got out of the van and went to Pleasure Media's studio to shoot. The second was that she drove her van away and had to find someone else for the endorsement. Yi Huanyan rushed over from the outdoor scene and got into Shang Enren's nanny van until her legs were about to break. Miss Shang, you signed the endorsement contract, so you should abide by our agreement. There are two sets of outdoor scenes and one set of interior scenes. Yi Huanyan went straight to the point and put the words on the table. Shang Enren raised her eyebrows and glanced at Yi Huanyan contemptuously. The outdoor scene you chose is in the scenic spot. It's full of tourists. Even if you wrap me up like a mummy, I can guarantee that someone can recognize me. You want to hurt me deliberately, don't you? Yi Huanyan frowned. The planning was approved by President Ling herself. No one has the right to decide on their own. The outdoor scene is arranged in the Zhoushan scenic spot with President Ling's signature. As for the tourists you mentioned, we will arrange to clear the place and try to keep them away from the tourists as much as possible. Don't use Ling Han to pressure me. What are you showing off for? Shang Enren's face darkened, and there was a touch of anger in her eyes. Do you really think your identity is a great existence in the Ling family? Hearing this, Yi Huanyan's face suddenly froze, and she looked at Shang Enren in surprise. Her identity? You're just a burden brought to the Ling family by Ling Han's stepmother. Without Zhang Meilan, you're just a superfluous existence in the Ling family. People with a little face won't stay in a family that doesn't belong to them. It's time for you to pack up and leave. Chapter 172. Shang Anren's words were angry and anxious, and it seemed that she didn't intend to leave any way out. Yi Huanyan's face was ugly, and the look of astonishment covered her eyes and eyebrows. She looked at Shang Anren in a daze and was caught off guard by her sudden words. How do you know? You want to ask me how I know, don't you? Shang Anren rudely interrupted Yi Huanyan and sneered. It's not difficult to find 1 or 2 photos of you in the house that Ling Han gave me. Yi Huanyan's face suddenly tightened, and she looked at Shang Anren in a daze. Before the house was given to Shang Anren, didn't Ling Han let people empty it? Did he still keep her things? Seeing Yi Huanyan's strange look, Shang Anren frowned and said coldly, Don't dream about it. Don't be delusional. Since Ling Han has handed that house over to me, I will naturally be able to deal with the things inside. I have long thrown away all your junk. If you don't believe me, I sincerely invite you to take a look. The words that you said to me in the past, I will now return them to you. Shang Anren's words were sharp, and there was a sarcastic smile on her lips. She looked at Yi Huanyan coldly. Don't take yourself too seriously. Yi Huanyan's eyes were shocked, and her fingers couldn't help clenching a little. Shang Anren's words were like a knife in the original wound of her body, cutting a hole along the original road, letting the blood flow and crazily sprinkling salt on it. Seeing that she looked sad and faintly painful, Shang Anren felt a little relaxed, and her eyes unconsciously showed some pride. Even the resentment that had accumulated in her chest since she learned the relationship between Ling Han and Yi Huanyan was swept away. So what? There must be a lot of problems between the two people. Even if she could see that Ling Han cared about Yi Huanyan, and she could see that Yi Huanyan had feelings for Ling Han, but wasn't there still herself between them? In this way, Yi Huanyan was just she was just a loser. So you are avenging yourself? Yi Huanyan's voice had lost the arrogance of Secretary Yi in the past. At the moment, she seemed weak, and even her shoulders were a little shorter. Shang Anren sneered. I just want to remind you not to take yourself and Ling Han seriously. What about knowing each other for 10 years? What about getting along with each other day and night? Do you think that you dare to point me because you have someone to support you? If Ling Han really cares about you, he won't let me come between you. She didn't speak fast, but it showed that she didn't take Yi Huanyan seriously. This is between me and him. You don't need to say more. Yi Huanyan frowned deeply and was a little unhappy. Is that so? So self-righteous? Then why don't you dare to tell the people in the company about your relationship? Yi Huanyan's face sank. What do you want to do? Nothing, Shang Anren sneered. I just think you are very pitiful. Whether you are his sister or his lover, once such an identity is exposed, it is not legitimate. After that, she smiled even more. And believe it or not, if it is exposed, in order to avoid unnecessary trouble, Ling Han will not hesitate to drive you out of the company, right? Yi Huanyan's face sank to the extreme. In her clenched fists, her nails were almost embedded in the flesh. The anger in her eyes had reached its peak. She gritted her teeth and said in a cold tone, Are you threatening me? Secretary Yi, don't be so unpleasant to hear. It's just leaving from pleasure. What's the big deal? With your ability, can't you find a better company than pleasure? And I am set on Ling Han. I don't intend to leave a way out for myself. Yi Huanyan stared at Shang Anren's dangerous eyes. She was silent for a long time and finally spat out a sentence. Her tone was a little stiff, and it could be heard that she was not willing to give up. Say it, your conditions. Since she started working, she rarely compromised with others. She was trained by Zhang Meilan and Ling Dongming. She had her own set of rules in her work. No one could break them, but now she had to break them. The endorsement of Baoli jewelry will be done according to my wishes. The arrangement of the outdoor location and the indoor shooting will be done according to my wishes. What I say is what it is. Sure enough, This was Shang Anren's idea. Yi Huanyan took a deep breath and her face was as cold as frost. The proposal has been decided. If you overturn it and start over, and you are not satisfied with Baoli in the end, I will still pack up and leave. I will leave anyway. That's what you want. A cold light flashed in Shang Anren's eyes. You're thinking too much. If you're not satisfied with the endorsement, not only will you leave, I'll also be implicated by Ling Han. How can I do something that doesn't benefit me? Besides, don't you know why I was chosen to take part in this endorsement? With my relationship with Mr. Li, you can pass the test no matter how bad it is. I just don't like the two places you chose. Yi Huanyan pondered for a few seconds. Where do you want to choose? The light in Shang Anren's eyes turned back slightly, and she smiled very provocatively. What do you think of the outdoor shooting? Hearing this, Yi Huanyan's originally tense face had a crack at the moment, and she became quite embarrassed. There was no need to think about where Shang Anren's home was. In the Ling family's old villa in Fujin Park. After a few seconds of silence in the carriage, Yi Huanyan finally agreed. She had no choice but to agree. Even though she was unwilling, even though she felt like her heart was being torn apart, and even though she felt that her self-esteem had been trampled by this woman, she still agreed. No matter what, she had to stay in Pleasure and Ling Han's side. She knew that once her relationship with Ling Han was made public, Ling Han would never keep her by his side. At that time, everything would be over. In the office of the president of Pleasure Group. After Qiao Mu reported the work, she was about to leave when Ling Han stopped her. Come, Baoli will shoot in Zhoushan, right? Remember to remind the shooting team to take precautions against the rain. Ling Han's voice was filled with concern. Qiao Mu was secretly surprised. Ling Han never paid attention to the weather forecast. It was a sunny day, and it did not look like it was going to rain. However, it was useless to pay attention to the weather forecast. Qiao Mu hesitated for a few seconds. Come, Baoli changed the location at the last minute. It's not in Zhoushan now. Hearing this, Ling Han frowned. Changed the location? It said that Miss Shang Anren and Secretary Yi reached an agreement. It's also to avoid attracting the attention of tourists and unnecessary trouble. Where did they go to shoot? Ling Han did not seem to care about Qiao Mu's reason for changing the filming location at the last minute. He only cared about where the filming location was. Fujin Court, Miss Shang Anren's villa. Ling Han's face darkened, and his tone suddenly turned cold. Who arranged it? Qiao Mu was slightly taken aback and tried to explain the matter tactfully. Secretary Yi is in charge of this project, so she should be responsible for choosing the location. I think she has her own considerations. Before she finished speaking, Ling Han's face had darkened to the extreme. Chapter 173. The Old Villa of the Ling Family in Fujin Park. There were two large courtyards in front and back of the three-story bungalow. The front yard was planted with newly transplanted flowers and plants. There was also a floor-length swing in the open space, with artificial vines wrapped around it. Half of the backyard was transformed into a swimming pool by Shang Anren. It was just completed before the end of the year, and now it was ready for use. The decoration of the whole house was greatly changed from the original old-fashioned to the Nordic style, which was bright and lively. As soon as she entered the door, Yi Huanyan felt a strong, strange atmosphere. She unconsciously glanced at the bedroom on the second floor. Shang Anren had just changed her clothes and went downstairs. Seeing her eyes, she slowly walked down the stairs. The other rooms have been renovated, but this one hasn't. There are a lot of useless sundries in the house, which are piled up in it. This is also Ling Han's order. Did he instruct Shang Anren to change the room that originally belonged to her into a sundries room? A wry smile appeared on Yi Huanyan's lips, but she resisted the uncontrollable bitterness in her heart and arranged for people to set up camera equipment in the living room to prepare for shooting. Yi Huanyan could also guess the intention of Shang Anren to arrange the outdoor shooting in this villa. On the one hand, it was to take advantage of the situation to hype up just like, inadvertently, revealed to the employees of Pleasure that the place where she lived was the old house of Ling Han's family. Once the endorsement advertisement was broadcasted, her team could naturally use this house to hype up her relationship with Ling Han. After all, it was just a scandal before. Ling Han had never admitted her identity in public. There were many people on the internet who were not optimistic about this relationship. If there was the old house of the Ling family, her identity as the future Mrs. Ling could be confirmed. The first scene. Shang Anren needed to go down slowly from the wide stairs of the villa. Her long skirt dragged on the stairs, layer by layer. The camera slowly moved from her finger with Lai Baoli's Only Love diamond ring to her wrist, revealing Lai Baoli's Love of Life colorful gold bracelet. The last was the highlight, Lai Baoli's main diamond necklace on her neck. For Shang Anren, who had been through hundreds of battles, this was just a very simple shot. It could be said that she passed on the first try, but she was not very satisfied and gave him another one. It could be said that she was conscientious in her work. The first shot ended, and the second shot should be a long shot of her walking from the living room to the swimming pool in the backyard. In the background, the male host was having a party, and the female host was walking out of the house, wearing a gorgeous dress to show the temperament of the female host. There were no lines during the whole process. All they had to do was show the beauty of their body movements and jewelry. Shang Anren walked towards the swimming pool in 12-centimeter high heels and suddenly stopped halfway. She rubbed her chin and frowned at the pool. Since it's a party, shouldn't there be people in the pool? The spring festival had just ended, and the temperature outside was still fluctuating from 0 degrees Celsius. How could they let people go into the water in this kind of weather? It wasn't impossible for them to get into the water, but because the filming location had been changed at the last minute, there was no time for Yi Huanyan to arrange for other extras. Besides, in the filming of a commercial, even if they were extras, they would still need to have a good figure and good looks. Where could they find them? As soon as Shang Anren stopped, her assistant took a down jacket and wrapped it around her. At the moment, she was frowning and staring at Yi Huanyan. Secretary Yi, although I'm willing to lend my house to shoot, aren't you too casual? Don't even have extras? Let me shoot against an empty pool? Is that right? Yi Huanyan frowned. At this time, the Film and Television Academy hasn't started. It's impossible to find someone. And the temperature is too low. It's easy for people to get into the water. Shang Anren glanced at her and her eyes fell on the pool. I've shot in the water in much colder weather than now. Why can't others do it? Don't you know about professional ethics? Professional ethics? Yi Huanyan took a deep breath. It's not a problem of professional ethics now. It's that we can't find someone to shoot. Your shots won't overlap with those of the extras. We'll hire another group of people to add the swimming pool part in the post-production. The editor will deal with the connection problem. Post-production. Shang Anren frowned. Who has so much time for you to come to my house to shoot? I'm busy. I'll find someone now. I must finish shooting today. Yi Huanyan's face froze. Where can I find someone for you? Shang Anren's eyes were filled with a strange look. She glanced around the scene. 2 men are needed, and 4 or 5 women are enough. There's no big close-up shot. It's just a long shot. Why don't you let the staff on the scene take over? She said this lightly, but Yi Huanyan's face became more ugly. If the number of extras was not enough, they would be willing to help if the staff came out to replace them. After all, they could make extra money. But now in this weather, if they didn't really pursue the career of actors, who would want to go into the water in a swimsuit? How could they? Yi Huanyan stared at Shang Anren and tried to restrain his anger. You said professional ethics. They are not in your line of work. Shang Anren took the hot coffee from the assistant and took a sip casually. His eyes were quite proud. Then, Secretary Yi, please think of a way. She was obviously trying to embarrass Yi Huanyan. Naturally, she would do whatever she wanted to embarrass her. Yi Huanyan frowned tightly. She knew that it was completely impossible to persuade Shang Anren, and she was caught by her, so she had to listen to her. It was useless to say more. She gritted her teeth and turned to clap her hands to gather the staff on the scene. "Everyone, now we can't find extras because of a temporary change in the shooting, so can you help to replace them? The salary will be 3 times that of ordinary extras. It's not that such a thing hasn't happened before. Those who are idle at the scene are willing to help, laughing and joking. Secretary Yi, you can just say it. Maybe we have a strong sense of camera. As soon as the film is released, some director will take a fancy to us. Hey, what do you want to do? A party is to wear a dress and drink in the living room, right? It's a little cold to wear a dress on this day, but it's only for a while. It's acceptable." Yi Huanyan's face was a little tense. She hesitated for a moment. "I want to wear a swimsuit." She was afraid that she would be refused as soon as she opened her mouth, so she quickly explained, "Only 2 men need to go into the water, and the girl can sit on the shore." As soon as the voice fell, there was a dead silence in the living room. Those people who had just been laughing and joking about being on camera were now silent and looked at each other. "Secretary Yi, I can't swim, so I'd better forget it." The first to speak was the stage supervisor who followed them. She was a girl, weak and not tall. She didn't look like she could go into the water in this kind of weather. After the girl opened her mouth, there was a continuous sound of refusal. There were all kinds of reasons, such as gastrointestinal problems, those who couldn't stand the cold, those who hadn't recovered from the cold. Shang Anren sat on the sofa and raised the corner of his mouth to show a smug sneer. Chapter 174. You are usually very active. Why don't you want to do it today? Shang Anren's voice suddenly sounded, and it was particularly clear in the discussion of a crowd of yes-men who refused to do it. Yi Huanyan turned back in surprise and saw her coming in a long black down jacket. She smiled gently and harmlessly. Even Secretary Yi, the favorite person of President Ling, went into the water in person. "You still push each other away? It's too unjust." Her words were half reproach and half sarcasm, which made the men present embarrassed first. "Secretary Yi, you also participate?" Among several people, the first to ask this question was a tall man, who seemed to be a little surprised. Yi Huanyan frowned and glanced at Shang Anren from the corner of her eyes. She knew that Shang Anren didn't give her a way out. She just wanted her to suffer a little. Originally, even if she didn't go into the water and paid more money, some of the people present were willing to go. Now Shang Anren said that she wanted to go. If she refused again, it would not be the case. It seemed that she did not want to do to others. She was afraid that it would cause dissatisfaction, and it would be difficult to carry out her work in the future. Thinking of this, Yi Huanyan took a deep breath. "Well, we don't have enough people. Everyone works in a group. It's the same for everyone. It's so cold. I ask you to help me. Of course, I will set an example first." As soon as this remark came out, there were many people willing to do it. Even the little girl who refused first was eager to have a try. After all, Yi Huanyan opened the shooting at the same time. Each participant would be rewarded with a big red envelope of 1,000 yuan. After everyone changed into swimsuits, the atmosphere in the whole yard suddenly became active. There were always extras holding their arms and teasing each other's figures. After all, it was so cold. If they didn't make a little more lively, how cold would it be? Yi Huanyan wore a rather conservative one-piece swimsuit and stood by the pool, shivering. According to the requirements of the shoot, her feet had to dangle in the water. She couldn't bear to listen to the laughter that was barely audible in the shivering. Shang Enren, who had always been very smooth in filming, did not know whether it was on purpose or what he wanted this time. A simple scene was repeatedly shot no less than 20 times, and the whole poolside complained incessantly. Yi Huanyan took advantage of the shooting interval to hold his arms to warm himself. While trying to appease people, he walked barefoot to Shang Anren and reminded him in a low voice, "You can make things difficult for me, but don't forget the staff on the scene. They can't hold on for too long. If they can't finish shooting today, it's your own time that will be wasted." Shang Anren frowned. Although he didn't want to listen to her, he had to listen. For the last one, She took off her down jacket and prepared to cross it. In the cold wind, she stroked the necklace around her neck and stood by the pool, looking like a queen looking down at the world. This is perfect. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief. Yi Huanyan hurriedly got up and put on her coat while shivering. Then, she helped the people around her to distribute towels to the participating staff. Xiao Li, Xiao Li. Suddenly, a woman's exclamation came from the other side of the pool. Looking in the direction of the sound, she saw a group of people gathered together. Hurry up, call an ambulance. She fainted. The scene was in chaos. Yi Huanyan accompanied the fainted girl to the ambulance. The follow-up matters of the scene were left to the planning. When Ling Han arrived at the villa, she had already left early because of this unexpected incident. Seeing Ling Han's sudden arrival, Shang Anren was surprised and happy. Han, how can you have time to come? We just finished shooting. Ling Han frowned and looked at the equipment that was packing up and withdrawing from the scene. He looked up at the bedroom on the second floor with the closed door. His eyes were like frost. Did you ask them to come here to shoot? Shang Anren's heart thumped, and his hand, which was about to hold his arm, paused slightly. Of course not. She hesitated for a few seconds. Secretary Yi thinks that if we shoot here, it will be more expensive and luxurious, so she changed the location temporarily. Ling Han frowned. Apparently, he didn't believe it. Shang Anren was nervous in his heart, but his face was not in a hurry, showing a trace of hesitation. But I also feel strange. Secretary Yi asked me if she could borrow this house. How did she know that this place was very suitable for the shooting? But I think Secretary Yi has been with you for so long. Maybe she knows this house? Her eyes were pure and her expression was calm. It didn't look like she was lying at all. Ling Han's face was cold. Where is she? She went to the hospital. Hearing this, Ling Han's voice suddenly rose, and his face changed greatly. Hospital? What happened to her? This reaction made Shang Anren secretly clench his fist, but his face remained motionless. Secretary Yi asked the staff to help replace the extras to wear swimsuits and go into the water. There was a little girl who was probably frozen for too long and fainted, so Secretary Yi accompanied her to the hospital. It should be no big deal. After that, we'll give the little girl some compensation and comfort. Hey Han, where are you going? Shang Anren followed a few steps out of the door, but saw Ling Han's tall and straight figure go straight to the car, and very decisively go in the direction of the nearest hospital. She can have a shooting accident when she does such a simple project alone. I don't think she wants to do it. In the hospital corridor, Yi Huanyan squatted in the corner and sneezed. He took out a tissue from his arms and wiped his nose. Because of the shooting accident, she didn't have time to dry herself or change her clothes. She hurriedly put on a coat over her swimsuit and followed him out. At the moment, her hair was still wet. The temperature of the hospital's air conditioning was obviously not enough. She was shivering in the corner. Who is Li Xiaoli's family? Me here. Yi Huanyan raised his hand weakly. I'm her boss. Is she all right? She's all right. She fainted because of hypoglycemia and the cold. Now she has a fever. It's not serious and she doesn't need to be hospitalized. After the drip, she can go home and rest slowly. She'll be fine when the fever goes down. Yi Huanyan thanked the doctor while sniffing. Just as she was about to go to the emergency infusion room to accompany Xiaoli, she saw a familiar figure standing in front of her, staring at her with a sullen face. President Ling, why are you here? Ling Han's face was gloomy. He took her arm and walked away without any explanation. After 2 steps, he opened the door at hand and pushed her in. There was the smell of disinfectant in the room. There were disinfectant tools in the broom on the ground. It looked like a utility room. It was a little narrow. As soon as she entered the room, Yi Huanyan was pressed against the door. She didn't even have time to breathe. She was frightened by Ling Han's questioning. What do you mean by setting the shooting location at the villa in Fujin Court? His eyes were full of anger, accusing her of her crime. Deep in his heart, that place was still a memory of him and her, their private territory. Although Shang Anren lived there, it was only a temporary thing. Now she exposed that place. Did it mean that she acquiesced to Shang Anren's identity there and calmly accepted the fact that he was with another woman? Chapter 175. Yi Huanyan didn't understand the reason for his anger. She resisted the discomfort in her heart and frowned. Let me go first. It's not my decision alone. Besides, the house is really in line with the shooting requirements of grace and atmosphere. Requirements? Shooting? Can you think of anything else besides shooting? The anger in Ling Han's eyes was even more intense, and his eyes were almost shooting fire. You actually dared to enter that house without my permission. That house is their common memory. Now that Shang Enren lives there, he doesn't want Yi Huanyan to step in. He can't tell whether he's afraid of what's mixed in those memories, or afraid that one day he regrets it and wants to move back again, but he's worried that some people will feel uncomfortable. But what he said made Yi Huanyan misunderstand. She stared at Ling Han in a daze, her tone bitter. Do you hate me so much? That house used to be my home. It's fine that you gave it to someone else, but now you can't even let me in? Ling Han was slightly stunned. Seeing that her eyes were shining and that what she said was completely different from what he wanted to express, he suddenly showed a little cramped, and the strength of his hand on her shoulder loosened a little. Yi Huanyan lowered her head and her shoulders trembled slightly. In the narrow storage room, there was the sound of her sobbing that she tried to suppress, which was very aggrieved. Ling Han was a little soft-hearted, but he was still dissatisfied with her indifferent attitude of letting go of the house so easily and working there without distraction, so his tone was not kind. Without my permission, you are not allowed to go to that house in the future. Yi Huanyan's eyes were dim, and she lowered her head and refused to speak. Did you hear that? Ling Han was a little impatient. He held her shoulder and looked down at her look. I heard it. Her voice was very small, and she gritted her teeth. She was full of unwillingness, but she didn't dare to show it easily. Ling Han frowned. When he looked down, he was shocked to find that she was wearing a swimsuit inside. Her kung fu coat was pulled messily, revealing a piece of soft breasts and deep cleavage. The great scenery was revealed in front of him. All of a sudden, his breathing quickened. Yi Huanyan didn't know. She bit her lip and angrily raised her head. There was a bit of resentment in her eyes as she stared at Ling Han. I agree to your request. Can you let me out now? I want to see Xiao Li. Ling Han didn't let go of her hand. He stared at her face that was flushed with anger. A part of his body that had been restrained for a long time showed some strange signs, reminding him that these days of being pure and abstinent should come to an end. Yi Huanyan was stunned for a moment by the slightly sullen face in front of her. When she came back to her senses, a warm feeling swept across her lips. She unconsciously opened her small mouth and was affected by his will for a while. Her breathing also quickened. The hand on her shoulder slowly wrapped around her exquisite curves and reached into the wide woolen coat. He held the two peaks behind her and pinched and flattened them through the tight-fitting swimsuit. He was so experienced that she quickly entered the state and her face was flushed. Ling Han sucked on her lips. His heavy breath pressed against her chest and slowly swept across her cheeks. Then, she heard an invasion that was like a drizzle and a breeze. Her whole body trembled and she couldn't help but let out a moan. The hand below her had already pulled open the elastic lower triangle of the one-piece swimsuit, rubbing against her sensitive spot with only the suit cloth between them. Her expression stiffened as she could already feel that familiar heat pressing against her, making her restless. Yen Yen, he panted heavily and breathed in her ear. In the haze, Yi Huanyan felt that she seemed to hear a shout in her dream. Her expression froze. At this time, the sound of the door opening suddenly came from behind, causing the whole door to tremble a few times. Strange, I didn't lock the door. Where did I put the key? A woman's voice came from the other side of the door. From the sound of it, it was the cleaning lady who had just pulled a mop out to clean. Yi Huanyan and Ling Han looked at each other. At the same time, Their expressions stiffened and they held their breaths. The footsteps at the door were far away. She was probably going to look for the key. Yi Huanyan let out a sigh of relief. She glanced at Ling Han embarrassedly and followed his burning gaze to look down at her chest. For a moment, she was flustered. She hurriedly tidied up her clothes, turned around, twisted open the door of the utility room, and fled. Ling Han stood at the door of the utility room. He still wanted more. Looking at Yi Huanyan's fleeing figure, he didn't know why, but he remembered what Ling Dongyu said in the hallway of the old house before he left. Have you ever considered who you want to spend the rest of your life with? In fact, he had considered it. She probably wouldn't live in Fujin Garden anymore. She might as well live at his place and treat it as a fresh start. Yi Huanyan didn't know what Ling Han was thinking. After running out of the utility room, she hurriedly left the hospital. She even forgot to check on Xiao Li, the employee who had fainted in the infusion room. Standing at the entrance of the hospital, she thought that it was unrealistic to ask her to go back now. She simply took out her phone and called Xiao Li, explaining that she had an emergency and had to leave first. Fortunately, Xiao Li was a good-tempered girl. She didn't ask much and didn't hold the company responsible for what happened today. She even thanked Yi Huanyan for sending her to the hospital in the first place before hanging up the phone. Sitting in the taxi, Yi Huanyan touched her face. It was a little hot. She didn't know why, but she remembered the words she had heard in the utility room. Yen yen. Her first reaction was that it was an illusion, or her own imagination. But after calming down, she felt that the call was very real. Did Ling Han really call her that? A part of her heart seemed to be churning, but in the next second, she was overjoyed. His attitude towards her had really changed. During the time they spent together during the New Year, and for the past 2 days, he would come home every night to have dinner with her. It was rare that he had the patience to talk about work with her. She could even say a few words about the decision of the company's staff. Night fell. Ling Han only arrived home half an hour later than Yi Huanyan. The food on the table was still untouched. Voices came from the kitchen. Ling Han put down his jacket and approached the kitchen with light footsteps. Lingling, remember not to put salt in this soup when you make it in the future. Let it slowly simmer until it's fragrant. You've already added a lot of seasonings. If you add more salt, it'll ruin its freshness. Yi Huanyan was wearing an apron. She had already changed her clothes. Her sleeves were rolled up. Her white hand was holding a ladle to remove the foam from the soup pot. Her other hand was holding the lid of the casserole with a wet towel. After the last ladle of foam was removed, she put the lid back on. Lingling's eyes were filled with admiration. Miss Yi, I've never seen you cook before. I didn't expect you to know so much about these things. I used to cook a lot, but I haven't done it in a long time. Yi Huanyan's tone was light. There was a gentle smile in the corner of her eyes. This soup still needs to simmer for half an hour. Help me look at the dishes on the table. If they're cold, bring them back and steam them again. Chapter 176. Ling Ling wiped her hands on her apron, turned around, and walked out of the kitchen. When she reached the kitchen door, she saw a figure hiding by the door. She opened her mouth, but was stopped by a look from him. Following Ling Han's gaze, Ling Ling subconsciously turned around to look at the figure in the kitchen who was focused on stewing soup. She understood, lowered her head, smiled, and walked straight to the dining room. Ling Han walked out of the shadows at the door and quietly entered the kitchen. After Yi Huanyan closed the lid of the casserole, she opened the lid of the other casserole. She was stewing taro and collecting the juice. She was using a spoon to taste the saltiness when she felt a figure approach behind her. She didn't even turn around to look at him. Help me get the salt. Half a spoonful is enough. The figure behind her paused, frowned, and turned around to look for the salt on the counter. Which one is the salt? A cold voice sounded in the kitchen. This familiar voice stunned Yi Huanyan. She panicked and the spoon slipped from her hand into the bubbling pot, splashing the hot soup. Ah! She grabbed her wrist and took a step back. She screamed and fell into a broad embrace. Ling Han was still holding a transparent spoon in his hand. Half a spoonful of white granular seasoning was filled. When her back bumped into his embrace, his arm shook, and more than half of the spoonful spilled. The marble counter was covered with white powder. Yi Huanyan suddenly felt the warmth from her back. Her whole body stiffened, and her face paled. The situation instantly became awkward. Clumsy, just like when you were young. A faint voice came from above her head. Although it was sarcastic, his tone was gentle, and his words slightly dispelled the awkwardness. Yi Huanyan blushed. She stiffly straightened her body and took 2 steps back. She reached for the spoon in the pot and looked for a rag to wipe the soup beside the stove. Why? Why are you in the kitchen? Ling Han didn't answer her. He just handed her the spoon in his hand. Here's the salt you wanted. Yi Huanyan was stunned. Without thinking, she took it and poured it into the pot. After pouring it, she felt that there was something wrong with the salt particles. She frowned and asked, "Where did you get it?" Ling Han pointed at the console beside him. There. That's white sugar. Ling Han's expression stiffened. Oh. The atmosphere was awkward for a few seconds. Well, you'd better go out. I'll be done in a while. Yi Huanyan was a little hesitant. He was standing in the kitchen like this, always interfering with her flexibility. She was afraid that if she let him stay like this, her pot of taro would be overcooked. Ling Han left without saying a word. When he left, there was a trace of annoyance on his face. There were 3 dishes and 1 soup for dinner. It was obvious that they were all Yi Huanyan's cooking. She hadn't cooked for a long time. The last time she cooked was before the Ling family's accident. She liked to experiment with new and novel dishes at home, and the whole family took turns to be her lab rats. Lingling's hand isn't feeling very well today. I came back early, so I cooked for her. Ling Han glanced at Lingling, who was busy packing in the kitchen. He didn't feel that there was anything wrong with her wrist. Yi Huanyan coughed dryly. I'll get the soup. Looking at the table full of dishes, there were meat and vegetables. He took a bite. It was the same familiar taste from before. Not long after, Yi Huanyan came back with the pot. Seeing that she was in a difficult position, Ling Han followed her gaze and saw the insulation pad on the table. He pulled it to the middle of the table. The boiling hot pot was placed on the table. Drink this soup while it's hot. Yi Huanyan rubbed her hands, picked up a small bowl and filled it with soup for Ling Han. How does it taste? She looked a little cautious. It's pretty good. Hearing this, Yi Huanyan's eyes revealed a hint of a smile. She sat down and ate happily. During the meal, Ling Han barely spoke. Even when Ling Dongming and Jiang Meilan were still around, he was like this. He was very similar to Ling Dongming in this aspect, so every time he ate, he would only hear the 2 of them chattering non-stop. In the blink of an eye, it was 2 years ago. Now, she was used to keeping quiet during the meal and didn't talk nonsense anymore. She always thought that not talking during the meal was Ling Han's rule, so when she heard Ling Han's question, she was a little stunned. When did you start learning to cook? She almost choked on the celery that she had just put into her mouth. Elementary school. From the 3rd grade. Why? Ling Han drank a mouthful of soup and looked up at her. Because I was hungry. This answer made the air freeze for a few seconds. She finally realized that she had answered something stupid and coughed. My father had just passed away, and the company was handed over to my mother to manage. She couldn't take care of me, so she found a nanny to take care of me. Later on, there was a school holiday, but the nanny who took care of me didn't come. For about 2 days, I don't remember how many days it was. My mother didn't come back either, but I was hungry. Children didn't have any concept of birth, aging, illness, and death. When Yi Huanyan's biological father passed away, she was still young and had just entered elementary school. After that, she had been taken care of by different nannies. The first time she cooked was because the nanny didn't go to work for 2 days and didn't ask for leave. She was starving, so she dug out the rice herself, cooked a pot of rice, and ate it with soy sauce. When it came to taking care of children, Jiang Milan really wasn't a meticulous person. After Yi Huanyan's biological father passed away, if it wasn't for the nanny, Yi Huanyan often didn't eat. Later on, she learned how to cook without a teacher, but it was also forced by the environment. As she spoke, Yi Huanyan carefully looked at Ling Han's expression. She vaguely felt that if she mentioned Jiang Milan, it would make him unhappy. However, after looking at him for a long time, there didn't seem to be any change, so she slowly let out a sigh of relief. Ling Han, on the other hand, didn't feel very comfortable. For some reason, he was flustered. After listening to her, he hurriedly drank 2 mouthfuls of soup, put down his chopsticks, and went upstairs. Yi Huanyan looked at the dishes in front of her, which were only slightly touched, and was a little disappointed. When Ling Ling was cleaning up the table, she looked at the table full of dishes with a look of pity on her face. "Young master, maybe you don't have a good appetite today," she comforted. "Miss Yi, your cooking is still very good." This kind of consolation wasn't actually comforting to Yi Huanyan. Instead, it made her feel even more uncomfortable. It wasn't that Ling Han didn't have a good appetite, but it was because he saw her and the food she cooked that caused his appetite to be bad. "Ling Ling, you don't have to buy the ingredients I told you before. In the future, you'll still be the one to cook." Yi Huanyan smiled bitterly and went upstairs. Just as she was about to enter the bathroom, her phone rang. It was a call from Su Nianhua. After the annual meeting before the new year, except for the group text message of blessing during the Spring Festival, they hadn't contacted each other again. On the other end of the phone, Su Nianhua's voice was still as gentle as a cup of water. He asked her to have dinner together tomorrow. "Let's have dinner together tomorrow. I just happened to have something for you. I've been following Shang Anren and Lai Baoli's endorsement deals these 2 days. I'm afraid I don't have time. Let's make an appointment later. My mother made cookies and asked me to bring them to you. This can't be kept for too long." "Your mother?" Yi Huanyan was stunned. Chapter 177. Su Nianhua's voice did not reveal much emotion on the phone, but Yi Huanyan still felt a little happy. During the Spring Festival, his relationship with his family seemed to have improved a lot. "My mother said that she wants to thank you in person." "Thank me?" Yi Huanyan was a little confused. "I told my mother about going home during the Spring Festival. You were the one who persuaded me to go back. She also wants to apologize to you in person for what happened more than 10 years ago." Yi Huanyan was stunned, and she understood. "It's nothing." On the other end of the phone, Su Nianhua said a few more things, but he did not mention anything about what happened on the night of the annual party, probably to avoid awkwardness. However, Yi Huanyan knew that he would ask eventually. According to the personality of the Lu Shan she knew, he would definitely find out about her relationship with Ling Han. The fact that his mother had sent him a cookie was just an excuse for a meeting. She also planned to find time to make things clear with Su Nianhua. In the direction of the study on the 2nd floor, a figure paused behind the door. His cold eyes stared at the vague figure downstairs, and a trace of irritation crept up his brows. "That's it then. I happen to have to go to the company tomorrow. We'll eat near the company." "Okay." After hanging up the phone, Yi Huanyan stood in the same place for a while. Then, she raised her head and looked in the direction of the study on the 2nd floor. She slowly took a breath and exhaled. Most people who were good at comforting themselves had experienced too many emotions of disappointment, depression, grievance, and loneliness. You always had to find a glimmer of hope in the pain. Otherwise, life would be too depressing. She would rather believe that Ling Han was not truly annoyed with her. Perhaps it was just as Ling Ling had said, that he was only in a bad mood today. On top of this bad mood, he was still able to treat her with a pleasant expression, which was already not easy to come by. Back in the bedroom, she walked straight to the bathroom and turned on the shower head. She took off her clothes amidst the sound of running water and looked at herself in the mirror. Even she couldn't help but take a few more glances at herself. Amidst the dense fog, a graceful figure could be seen in the mirror. Compared to when it was clearly seen, it was even more mysterious. The two round breasts in front of her chest trembled slightly as she walked. Her long hair, which was slightly damp from the steam, stuck to her back, making her appear even more alluring. Outside the bathroom, a rustling sound was drowned out by the sound of water. Separated by a wall, a revolving door slowly turned, and a tall figure stepped into the one-third bedroom that he had not been to for a long time. His grey bathrobe was loosely tied with a belt around his waist, revealing more than half of his chest. It was full and straight, with sparkling and translucent water droplets. His short hair was still dripping with water droplets, which were dripping down his chest. He pursed his lips tightly, but his expression was not as serious as before. Rather than being serious, it would be better to say that he was nervous. The sound of water in the bathroom stopped abruptly, followed by the sound of a hairdryer, accompanied by a humming tune. It stopped after less than 5 minutes. When she opened the door again, her mouth was full of toothpaste foam, and she was holding a toothbrush in her mouth. Her snow-white arms were holding the sliding door of the bathroom, and her eyes were wide open as she stared at Ling Han. She was only wrapped in a light pink bath towel, which barely covered the spring scenery in front of her chest, but it could not cover her two straight and slender legs. At this moment, she was slightly bent over, and her other hand was holding the long hair on her shoulder. Probably because she was feeling hot, a large handful of black hair was held in her hand, and it was separated from her shoulder and swaying in her hand. At this moment, Yi Huanyan interpreted the languid style to the extreme. And right in front of Ling Han was the cleavage of her chest. Two soft lumps were squeezed in the narrow towel, trembling slightly. Their eyes met in the air. She was stunned for a few seconds with the toothbrush in her mouth, then she quickly turned her back and closed the bathroom door again with a swish. Only Ling Han was left on the bed, and there was a strange hint of red in his eyes. He turned his head stiffly, and his gaze fell on a part of his body that suddenly felt strange. When she came out again, her face was already very red. Her mind was full of the accident in the hospital utility room in the afternoon. At this moment, she seemed to be more convinced that what she heard was not an illusion. He was waiting for her. "Come here." Seeing that she was hesitating at the bathroom door, Ling Han could only speak up himself and pat the side of his body. Yi Huanyan moved her feet and carefully walked over. Her soft home slippers walked very softly on the carpet, and no sound could be heard. The mattress sank slightly with her movements, but the two of them involuntarily moved closer to the middle position. While she was in a daze, her snow-white shoulders had already pressed against Ling Han's arm. For some reason, tonight there was a kind of shyness and strangeness of the wedding night. And Ling Han didn't start off emotionlessly like he usually did in business. He suddenly grasped her hand. This was what Yi Huanyan didn't expect. Her throat tightened at the moment, as if the moment he held her hand was more sensitive than any other part of her body. Her whole body was hot and completely burned. "If you don't want to, you don't have to endorse Shang Enren starting tomorrow." His tone was as indifferent as ever, probably rendered by the light in the room, with some indescribable gentleness. Yi Huanyan was stunned. At this moment, mentioning Shang Enren made her feel somewhat uncomfortable in her heart. Didn't I say that I wouldn't talk about business after work?" At least she didn't want to hear the name Shang Enren before she went to sleep. For so long, she had deceived herself and others, and she had been blind. At least in her sleep, she didn't want this woman to exist. Ling Han frowned. "You can think about it. I'm serious." If this sentence was accompanied by a confession of love, it would be more appropriate. Unfortunately, Ling Han was never such a person. Even if he was, he wouldn't say such words to Yi Huanyan. "You came to my room just to talk about this?" Yi Huanyan's voice was a little small, and her expression was aggrieved. Ling Han was slightly stunned. He recalled that he was smoking by the bedside after taking a shower, but when he heard the sound of water splashing next door, he suddenly couldn't hold back. He was also young and full of vigor, and at the time when he was most hungry and thirsty. Previously, Yi Huanyan accompanied him every night, and it had become a habit. After the spring festival, he hadn't touched meat for more than half a month. Suddenly provoked in the utility room in the afternoon, he couldn't stand it. No. His eyes tightened. Then you. Yi Huanyan gritted her teeth and didn't know what to ask. Sit on my lap. Such a voice suddenly sounded in the room, making her completely stunned. Looking up, Yi Huanyan's eyes were burning, and he didn't seem to be joking. He was still holding her hand. Without waiting for her to come back to her senses, he exerted some strength and used his other hand to separate her legs from the middle of her thighs. He controlled her so that she was kneeling on his thighs, facing him. His eyes were like fire. This sudden and very shameful posture made Yi Huanyan's whole person stunned. Chapter 178. The pink bath towel was on the verge of falling. She had no choice but to support her chest with one hand. The position of kneeling on his lap inevitably exposed everything below her waist to the light. She was angry and embarrassed. She lowered her head and gritted her teeth, not daring to speak. The pair of large hands that had just separated her legs did not leave the middle and reached deep into her body. At the same time, his other hand left her waist. She cried out in surprise and had no choice but to hook her arms around his neck. Her chin was gently lifted. Her eyes were like water as she stared at his handsome features. Tonight was surprisingly gentle. Even those cold and hard edges seemed to have turned into gentle lines. Did you feel it? He asked. Yi Huanyan was stunned for a second. She quickly realized that the feeling he was talking about was a certain place. Suddenly, her face burned again. That night, Ling Han was surprisingly gentle. He gently breathed in her ear and gently went in and out. There was only a long period of pleasure and no trace of pain. He did not say any humiliating words. This made Yi Huanyan feel that this was a dream that left no trace when she woke up. Late at night, that fair face did not have any makeup. It was missing the fierceness in the company during the day. It also looked thin and weak. Ling Han lifted the blanket and covered her shoulders. He smoothed her hair from her neck and put it aside to let her sleep more comfortably. In this state between them, he did not know how to go further. Take it slow. The next day, when Yi Huanyan woke up, the bedside was still warm. The smell that belonged to him in the air proved that this was not a dream. She got out of bed absent-mindedly, changed her clothes, washed up, and went downstairs to eat. Ling Han had already left. It was not a dream, but it also felt like a dream. Her messy thoughts kept her in a daze as she left the house. It was not until she squeezed into the subway and was stepped on that she felt a little more awake. Life had not changed. Whether it was a dream or not didn't make much of a difference. Today's shoot was in Pleasure's own studio. Back then, Shang Anren had requested to move the indoor shoot to Pleasure's own studio. Without even thinking about it, it was obvious what was going on. It was nothing more than wanting to get closer to Ling Han and find an excuse to meet him in between shoots. After Yi Huanyan arrived, she first tidied up the set. Not long after, the main character appeared on stage. In terms of work, she was indeed a dedicated person and did not put on airs. At the request of the photographer, Shang Anren constantly changed his posture. He prepared a total of 10 sets of clothes and 10 sets of jewelry. Each set took about 50 or 60 shots. Finally, one of the 50 or 60 shots was chosen as the main poster. According to the degree of cooperation of Shang Anren, the work could be finished in the morning. Yi Huanyan stood beside the computer. The camera had already sent the photos to the computer. What do you think of these photos? Yi Huanyan asked. The man next to the computer nodded. Miss Shang is really good. She is familiar with the shooting of endorsement posters and saves a lot of trouble. Basically, you can use any one of them. Yi Huanyan breathed a sigh of relief. Yesterday at the villa, he had not suffered in vain after being ordered around by her arrogant and bossed around by her. She was in a good mood. Naturally, she was more cooperative today. After half of the shoot, Yi Huanyan asked the assistant to buy lunch. While waiting, the photographer asked Shang Anren if she needed to rest, but she refused. No, the earlier we finish the shoot, the earlier we can get off work. Let's have a rest after lunch. It saves time. You must be very busy. The photographer blushed and focused more on shooting. At the door of the studio, a tall figure approached. Someone shouted, President Ling, Shang Anren, who was shooting, was happy. She interrupted the shooting directly and walked out of the white curtain with her skirt. There was only a vague figure left in the photographer's last photo. Han. She slowly walked in front of Ling Han. Han, why are you here? Ling Han handed her the coffee in his hand and said lightly, You've worked hard. It's not hard. Shang Anren lowered her head and showed a little shyness. Yi Huanyan was standing not far behind Shang Anren at this time. She lowered her head and tried not to see this scene, but she felt very uncomfortable. Ling Han looked over Shang Anren and fell in the distance. He immediately looked back at Xiao Dong and took a cup of coffee from her hand. Then he walked straight past Shang Anren and toward Yi Huanyan in the distance. Shang Anren's face stiffened. She looked at Ling Han's figure. When she saw Ling Han handing the cup of coffee to Yi Huanyan, there was obviously a layer of frost between her eyebrows. Xiao Dong's voice sounded in the studio. No one paid attention to her strangeness. It seemed that as long as Ling Han was not standing next to her, she would no longer be the focus. Everyone has worked hard. President Ling bought coffee for everyone to refresh themselves. The sound of people thanking Ling Han rose one after another. Ling Han was thanking Yi Huanyan, but everyone thought that he was thanking the films on the computer. The cameraman and the post-production crew, including the lighting crew, all rushed up and pointed at the films that had just been shot. It was as if they were competing for credit and trying to please Ling Han. Yi Huanyan held a cup of coffee with a smile on her face. This is a good shoot. Everyone is very cooperative. Really? Let me see. Ling Han looked calm and moved closer to the computer screen. At the same time, he shortened the distance between him and Yi Huanyan. A group of people behind him crowded over and squeezed them together. From afar, Ling Han looked like he was resting his chin on Yi Huanyan's head. Secretary Yi, I think it would be better if Anren raised her arms a little more in this place. President Ling, look, it would be better if Miss Shang stood on tiptoe in this place. This is not bad, but the hair is a little messy. The stylist probably didn't take care of it. Shang Anren stared at the two people surrounded by the crowd. The people around her were asking for credit. She suddenly had a feeling that she had been played, which made her feel angry from the bottom of her heart. Was she a clown? Just like that, he let them make comments. Why? Sister Sue came over with the makeup artist to touch up Shang Anren's makeup. She pulled out a chair beside her and let her sit down. She probably felt that she was not in a good mood, so she hurriedly finished the makeup and let the makeup artist go. Anren, last time you asked me to check Secretary Yi, was it because she and President Ling? Shang Anren raised her eyes and glanced at Sister Sue. Just pretend that you don't know anything. President Ling rarely comes to the studio. Sister Sue reminded her. If it goes on like this, it won't be good. What can I do? Shang Anren stared into the distance angrily. Why don't you seize the time to hype up in front of the media? I'll have someone arrange an interview for you and talk about your feelings. At least you can hype up the new play. Sister Sue, Shang Anren's tone suddenly became colder. Do you know how to do anything else besides hype? I'm not asking you to play with a high salary. It's just hype. How long can it maintain the popularity? Do you want me to become a big joke? Shang Anren's eyes were like frost, so cold that people didn't dare to look directly at her, but she wasn't looking at Sister Sue. Her eyes fell on the lamp stand in the distance. Chapter 179. While chatting happily in front of the computer, Shang Anren's agent suddenly walked over and interrupted with an apologetic face. I'm sorry, everyone. Anren has a job in the afternoon, so please hurry up and shoot first. Yi Huanyan hurriedly told everyone to go back to their places, clapped his hands, and only the lighting technician turned on the lights. Ling Han stood in place for a while, and Xiao Dong reminded him. Mr. Ling, it's said that Mr. Li is here to visit. Ling Han nodded. Let's go to the door to meet him. Lai Baoli's Mr. Li is one of Shang Anren's pursuers. He appreciates her very much. Shang Anren is responsible for this endorsement. And this Mr. Li is also a big customer of pleasure. From the point that Ling Han personally went to the door to pick him up, it can be seen how much importance he attaches to him. Under the white curtain, Shang Anren changed into a pink sequin short skirt. This is Lai Baoli's spring new style, which focuses on the girls' market. From bracelets to necklaces, earrings, and rings, it is a series, named Love of Cherry Blossoms. At the moment, Shang Anren looks playful, stands on tiptoe, and shows a sweet smile to the camera. Well, here it is. The photographer gave a thumbs up. Shang Anren went over to take a look, but was not satisfied. This light doesn't seem to work. It should be much better if it's also lit up here. Where's the reflector? Find someone to add a reflector here. The people in charge of lighting on the scene are all professionals. It's impossible to find someone casually. Only Xiao Zhao, who is in charge of the light stand, has learned how to light. You, come here and help hold the reflector. The photographer waved his hand, then scratched his head and frowned. Then we have to find someone to look after the light stand. There was a problem with a foot of the light stand 2 days ago. We have to hold it a little. Isn't Secretary Yi idle? Shang Anren suddenly looked in the direction of Yi Huanyan. The photographer Xiao Wang was stunned. He looked at Yi Huanyan, who was staring at the computer in the distance. He patted his thigh and ran over. Secretary Yi, can you do me a favor? Yi Huanyan was looking at the photo editing. When she heard this, she turned around and saw the photographer. She smiled and said, "What can I help with? I don't really know how to take photos." "It's fine. Just help me look after the lamp stand over there." 2 days ago, there was a problem with one of the triangular lamp stand's legs. I need someone to hold it when I use it. Yi Huanyan looked around and saw that everyone was busy with their own tasks. She seemed to be the only one who had nothing to do, so she agreed. All right. The black lampstands were more than 2 meters tall, and there was one on each side. Only Yi Huanyan needed someone to hold on to the lampstand. When they were in position, Yi Huanyan studied the lampstand. Although it was said that one of its legs was broken, it was actually not that bad. It was just a little unstable, and as long as it was not touched, it would not fall over. After the lighting and props were in place, the filming continued. Because Shang Anren had to catch a plane in the afternoon, the shooting process had to be speeded up. The photographer was obviously careful and was not as unhurried as in the morning. "Come here, Miss Shang. Look here. Over here, smile. Okay, raise your hand." Yi Huanyan held the lampstand with both hands. The phone in her pocket suddenly vibrated. She hesitated for a moment and did not answer. But the phone kept ringing. A familiar name appeared in her mind. Su Nianhua. They had made an appointment to have lunch together last night. Maybe it was time. Thinking that the lampstand would not collapse so easily, she freed a hand, reached into her pocket, and took out the phone. It was an unfamiliar number. "Hello. Hello. May I ask who is this?" There was no sound on the other end of the phone. At this time, Shang Anren was facing the DSLR camera. After hearing the voice behind her, a trace of coldness suddenly appeared in her eyes. She gave Xiao Zhao, who was in charge of lighting, a look. Xiao Zhao looked down at the line under her feet. She exerted a force, and the entire curtain in the studio shook violently. Someone cried out in alarm. Clatter! The 2-meter-high lampstand swayed and slipped from Yi Huanyan's hands. She reached out and desperately tried to hold the lampstand column, but the gravity of the collapse exceeded her temporary strength. The lampstand swayed and brought down a row of small lampstands. The dazzling white light swayed in the air for a few seconds, and then fell straight toward the middle of the curtain. Shang Anren stood in the middle of the curtain. Ah! The scream was drowned out by the loud sound of the lampstand falling. Zizizi, the lamp tube fell to the ground and broke into pieces. The circuit kept buzzing. For a moment, The whole studio was dark. In addition to the initial exclamation, there were some voices. The photographer held the camera and fell aside. He got up and coughed twice. He frowned and shouted, "Ahem, is anyone hurt? What happened to the circuit?" In the darkness, the voices of several lighting masters came out, and they reported their safety. Suddenly, a shrill scream pierced through the studio. "Ah!" It was Shang Anren's voice. The whole studio was in chaos in an instant. Led by Shang Anren's agent, Sister Sue, she turned on the flashlight of her mobile phone and hurriedly surrounded 7 or 8 staff members on the scene. After checking, someone screamed, "Miss Shang is hurt. Help. Oh my God, her leg is stuck in the lampstand. Call an ambulance." Yi Huanyan suddenly returned to her senses, turned on the light of her mobile phone and ran in the direction of Shang Anren, trying to push the crowd away. "Let me see." Yi Huanyan was the person in charge of the whole project. When they heard her voice, they naturally gave way. At this time, the surroundings were illuminated by the light of the mobile phone. Shang Anren's half-body was stuck under the huge lampshade, and her leg was stuck under the lampshade. She was bleeding. Because of the pain, there was no blood on her face. The scream just now had taken all her strength. As soon as Yi Huanyan approached and was about to touch her, her facial features were distorted with pain. "What's the matter?" Ling Han's voice suddenly came from the direction of the studio door. "I don't know who said it. Miss Shang was hurt by the fallen lampstand. She is calling an ambulance." Then, the crowd automatically separated, and a tall figure hurried towards the direction of the curtain. President Ling. Shang Anren's wound was still bleeding. At this moment, she was already weak and sweaty. When she saw Ling Han coming, she grabbed Ling Han's hand regardless and said painfully, "Han, I'm in pain." Mr. Li of Lai Baoli followed closely behind Ling Han. Seeing this, his face was livid. "What's the matter?" "Mr. Li, don't worry. The ambulance will be here soon," Xiao Dong explained hurriedly. She just learned about the situation. Whispers could be heard from the crowd. "Isn't Xiao Zhao in charge of this lampstand?" "No, Xiao Zhao was called to get the light. I just saw Secretary Yi guarding the lampstand." Hearing this, Ling Han's face sank. Chapter 180. The voice of the discussion was not loud, and Secretary Ye's 3 words were very vague, but everyone present heard it. Most of them knew it, but they didn't dare to say it too clearly because of Mr. Li's presence. Of course, Mr. Li of Lai Baoli also heard this, but he didn't hear who it was, and his face turned even uglier. "What kind of photography team are you? How can the lamp stand fall down? Who is in charge of it? What's the use of such a person in the company?" Ling Han's eyes shifted 2 inches from Shang Anren's face. Yi Huanyan on the opposite side was pale and had lost his sense of propriety. His eyes darkened and he said coldly, "We can't wait for the ambulance. For people come and lift the lampstand." His actions quickly diverted everyone's attention. No one was in a hurry to investigate the matter of the lampstand. They were busy lifting the lampstand. As soon as the lampstand moved, it was bound to pull Shang Anren's injured leg. Her originally numb nerves seemed to be stirred into a ball at the moment, rampaging in her body. 1, 2, 3, lift. Ah! A mournful cry echoed throughout the studio. Shang Anren was carried out from under the lampstand. "Qiao Mu, go and drive." Ling Han picked up Shang Anren with a serious face. Mr. Li hurriedly stepped forward. "Go, take my car. I've already asked the driver to wait in the parking lot." Seeing that Ling Han was going to leave, Yi Huanyan quickly took off his coat and wrapped it around Shang Anren. Before he got close, he saw Ling Han consciously avoid him with a faint alienation in his eyes. "Sister Sue, Anren's clothes." Shang Anren's agent hurriedly stepped forward with the coat and covered Shang Anren. Ling Han then walked towards the door with Shang Anren in his arms. "Mr. Li, sorry to trouble you." Several people followed behind him who were ready to help. Yi Huanyan didn't have time to think about it and hurriedly stepped forward. I'll go with you. No need. Ling Han glanced at her coldly. He immediately disappeared from the entrance of the studio with Shang Anren in his arms. That gaze seemed to have an indescribable power that froze Yi Huanyan in place. Even after the power switch in the studio was switched on and the light was restored, she didn't move an inch even when the people around her came and went. She was in charge of the lampstand, but she really didn't expect it to fall. After Ling Han left, Shang Anren's agent took his mobile phone and went to the outside of the studio to make a phone call. He tried to lower his voice and looked dignified. I've sent you the video. Find a way to send it to various media as soon as possible. After hanging up the phone, she pulled out an envelope and handed it to Xiao Zhao. She patted Xiao Zhao's shoulder meaningfully and said, "This is half of what I promised you. I'll give you the other half after this is over if there are no problems." "Sure." Xiao Zhao took out a stack of brand new bills from the envelope and nodded slightly with a flattering look on his face. "If something like this happens again in the future, look for me." Until the lunch break in the studio, Yi Huanyan was still there. The lampstand had been cleaned up. Except for the lack of a lampstand, the scene looked normal. She sat on the steps under the shooting curtain and sighed heavily. Her mind was in a mess. Su Nianhua's phone rang at this time. "Yen Yen, are you still in the company?" "Well, I may not be able to eat with you. I have something to do." Yi Huanyan's voice was a little weak. "It's about work." The other end of the phone was in the back seat of the white nanny van driving on the main road of the city. Su Nianhua's voice was tinged with disappointment. "Then, next time. I'll ask someone to put the cookies in your office." "Well, thank you to Auntie for me." She wasn't in the mood to go anywhere, nor was she in the mood to say another word, so Su Nianhua was silent for 2 seconds before she hung up. On the other side, Su Nianhua opened his mouth and was about to ask her if something had happened when he heard the phone beep and was hung up. He couldn't help but frown. He thought she was busy with work, so he didn't pay much attention to it. He just looked down at the box of well-packaged cookies in his hand. "Old Lei, help me ask someone to send this to Secretary Ye's office." Remy, who was holding his mobile phone and looking at the itinerary, looked up when he heard this. "Secretary Yi? Forget it." Su Nianhua frowned. She should be busy now. She probably doesn't have the time or the mood to eat these. It's a waste to give them to her. It's better to give them to me. Remy took the box of cookies from him and sighed. "You still don't know. Half an hour ago, Shang Anren was hit by a lampstand and was sent to the hospital. Secretary Yi is in charge of this project, and she should be very busy." In the agent business, they all knew each other. He had a little friendship with Shang Anren's agent, Sister Su. Shang Anren was also popular. Although there was no news in the media, they had already received the news in their circle. Su Nianhua's face tightened. "Brother Wang, please drive faster." Remy looked at Dong Xuebing in surprise. "Why are you still going? Aren't you adding to the trouble?" Su Nianhua frowned and did not say anything. He felt Yi Huanyan's attitude when she answered the phone earlier did not seem like she was very busy. Instead, she looked like she was wronged. Xiao Dong came over with a lunchbox for Yi Huanyan, but she rejected it. "I'm not hungry. You can share it with everyone." Yi Huanyan held her forehead and spoke reluctantly. Xiao Dong didn't know much about the situation. He only thought that Yi Huanyan was worried about the project again, so he comforted her. "Sister Yi, fortunately, the posters are almost finished. This lampstand is not too heavy. There should be no problem. At most, it will delay Shang Anren's work. Our company will lose money. Natural disasters and man-made disasters can't be avoided, and we can't be too harsh on ourselves." After 3 or 4 months as a secretary, Xiao Dong is now familiar with the job. He also has a way to comfort people, unlike the ignorant little girl who just graduated half a year ago. But Yi Huanyan is not worried about work. Shang Anren's injury touched her heart, but what really annoys her is Ling Han's attitude towards her just now. When she took the coat and wanted to put it on Shang Anren, he dodged as if he was afraid that she would hurt some rare treasure of his. Shang Anren's position in his heart was obvious. At this time, Ling Han had sent Shang Anren to the nearest emergency hospital. Although there was no blood stain on his expensive suit, it was obvious that he was in a mess. President Li followed beside him with an indignant expression. "President Ling, you have to give me and Enron an explanation for this matter. She's the link between our companies. How could it end up like this just because of a few photos?" Qiao Mu saw Ling Han's expression and explained with a lowered head, "Director Li, accidents are inevitable. Even if it's an accident, isn't there a person in charge of this lampstand? I heard it just now. What kind of secretary is she? Whose secretary is she? She must be severely punished and fired," Director Li said with certainty, looking like he was going to get to the bottom of it. Qiao Mu's face turned strange, and he looked at Ling Han. Chapter 181. Ling Han frowned, and irritation was written all over his handsome face. "President Li, this is Pleasure's own business. Don't worry about the endorsement. It won't be delayed." Hearing this, President Li's face darkened slightly. He stared at Ling Han for a few seconds and snorted. "President Ling, do you really think I take this endorsement seriously? If it weren't for Enron pulling the strings for Lai Baoli's jewelry, I would be willing to work with anyone." The words "Little Boss Ling" were extremely provocative. After saying this, he deliberately sneered. President Ling is no longer here, or else Pleasure wouldn't be in such a foul mood now. Needless to say, he was referring to the internet celebrity on the Shanghai live streaming platform. This was not the first time he ridiculed Ling Han for not being presentable and that his artists were all lowly. Lai Baoli used to be on good terms with Pleasure when Ling Dongming was still here. President Li was more than 10 years younger than Ling Dongming, so he could be considered half a junior. When Ling Dongming was here, he was quite respectful to him. However, he acted like a superior elder to Ling Han, especially when it came to Shang Anren. There were many open and secret exchanges between them. "Do you think that if my father were here, he would allow outsiders to criticize Pleasure?" Ling Han's face was cold, and he slightly raised his chin with contempt. "Since President Li doesn't want to continue this endorsement, it will be considered a unilateral breach of contract. Do as you wish." President Li's face darkened, and he turned to leave with a snort. Qiao Mu frowned. "President Ling, you're letting President Li leave like this? Lai Baoli's order. That will depend on how much he thinks of Enron." After saying this, he pondered for a few seconds, looked in the direction President Li left, and said in a low voice, "Just in case, contact the company's lawyer department in advance and get ready for a lawsuit." While Qiao Mu went to buy water, Ling Han sat in a chair at the entrance of the emergency room with a worried look on his face. When the light frame was pressed on Shang Anren, the words of the crowd fell into his ears. He faintly felt that this was a hidden danger, but there was no original plan, and there was no way to deal with it for a while. He didn't let Yi Huanyan have contact with Shang Anren, nor did he let her follow him in the car. The main reason was that he was afraid that after being photographed, he would be hunted by Shang Anren's fans. At that time, Shang Anren's injury in the company would ferment, and a small thing would become a big thing. If this incident was someone's fault, then the spearhead would be directed at the person who made the mistake. If no one made a mistake and it was just an unavoidable accident, then the anger of the fans would be directed at the person in charge of the project. It was Yi Huanyan. Therefore, from the perspective of the person in charge of the project, it was indeed inappropriate for her to face the public now. And now, the more serious problem was that some people were saying that Yi Huanyan was in charge of the lampstand at the time. Then the person at fault and the person in charge of the project would be Yi Huanyan. It seemed that it was inevitable that she would be criticized by the fans. Ling Han was a little irritated. When Qiao Mu came back with the water, she didn't see him at the entrance of the emergency operating room. She saw a figure smoking on the corridor balcony in the distance, and a few cigarette butts were thrown crookedly in the trash can next to him. It seemed that he didn't care about the operation at all. Xiao Mu looked up at the lights in the operating room and then at the mineral water in her hand. She stared at the back of the figure and silently counted to 3, but she still didn't see that he had the intention to turn around. She remembered what Ling Han said in front of Director Li just now. His attitude was that he completely regarded Shang Anren as an ordinary artist in the company who made money. A trace of sullen anger slowly rose in his eyes. He turned around and threw the water into the trash can. Then he held a chair and slowly sat down, absent-mindedly looking at the red light in the operating room. It was really tiring to pretend to be indifferent in front of people. He wanted to stand by and watch her being trampled on by someone else. It was a helpless and heartbreaking thing. There were 2 different thoughts at both ends of the corridor. Su Nianhua hurried to the studio on the first floor of the pleasure building. As expected, Yi Huanyan was still there. A pretty and sweet girl was sitting next to her. She was wearing a business suit similar to Yi Huanyan's and was talking to her with her head lowered. She looked absent-minded and didn't even open the lid of the lunchbox beside her. He took a deep breath and walked to her. Xiao Dong was the first to react. A shadow fell in front of her and blocked the light, but he didn't leave. She looked up and revealed a surprised expression. Su Nianhua. Yi Huanyan looked up and was stunned for a few seconds. Why are you here? Xiao Dong smiled. She seemed to understand something when she remembered the scene of the 2 of them walking the red carpet at the annual gala. Then you guys talk. I'm leaving. After Xiao Dong left, Su Nianhua extended his hand to Yi Huanyan. Get up. You promised to have lunch with me today. Yi Huanyan felt helpless and wanted to refuse. She wanted to say that she was not in the mood today. But after thinking about it, she felt there was nothing else to do today. In the end, she held Dong Xuebing's hand and stood up. I don't have much appetite. What do you want to eat? I will accompany you. Good. I don't have much appetite either. Su Nianhua raised his eyebrows. Are you free this afternoon? Let me take you somewhere. Yi Huanyan paused for a second. Stop fooling around. I am, sigh. She wanted to say something but ended up sighing. She looked down at her feet silently and didn't want to move. It's because of Shang Enren. It's normal to have accidents during the filming. Su Nianhua didn't seem to take it seriously. He took the coat in her hand and put it on her shoulders again. For people like Shang Enren, the company must have bought insurance for her. You don't have to worry too much about the company losing money. Yi Huanyan smiled bitterly. Who said I'm worried about losing money? You can still smile. You're not too bad. Put on your clothes and come with me. Su Nianhua blinked. His eyes were like water and very gentle. Yi Huanyan realized that he was deliberately teasing her with his words. She was a little surprised. Well, as he said, going out for a walk may make her feel better. Fortunately, it was winter, and no one would care if she wore a lot. Su Nianhua changed his clothes. He wore a black casual cotton-padded jacket, a hat and a mask. He took Yi Huanyan and walked on the commercial street. No one would have thought that such an overdressed man would be the shining rock star Su Nianhua on the stage. Where are you taking me? Yi Huanyan couldn't help asking. The place where I used to go. Between the mask and the hat, only a pair of peach blossom eyes could be seen blinking at Yi Huanyan. They were gentle with a bit of playfulness. Yi Huanyan was a little hesitant. For a moment, she didn't know what the place he was talking about was. There were many places they used to go. The McDonald's next to the school, the open-air storytelling stall under the overpass, the stinky tofu stall on the food street. Yi Huanyan, who didn't have parents, could take Lu Shan from the east to the west of the city during the summer vacation and eat all the barbecue stalls on the roadside. The old street. Su Nianhua sighed faintly. It seemed that he was blaming Yi Huanyan for not even remembering this. Chapter 182. Lanjiang City's old street was an antique building developed in the West District. The most famous thing along the street was stinky tofu. If you walked down the street, you would see 9 stinky tofu stalls in front of every 10 shops. Back then, Yi Huanyan and Lu Shan spent a summer to discover the truth at the 26 stinky tofu stalls on Old Street. The old woman at the corner of West Street had the cleanest stinky tofu, but the old man at the entrance of the pearl shop on East Street had the most memorable stinky tofu. The old man next to the Tonghulu shop sold the most stinky tofu, while the old woman next to the sausage shop loved to sprinkle coriander on the stinky tofu. She wouldn't sell it even if they didn't want it. Except for the cleanest stinky tofu, which was personally tested by Lu Shen, the rest were summed up by Yi Huanyan herself. With his spoiled stomach, he couldn't eat the food on the street. He would definitely have diarrhea if he ate even a little bit. Only the old woman at the corner of West Street didn't have diarrhea. Now that he mentioned Old Street, the memories came back to her, full of youthful breath. Old Street, she murmured. She hadn't been there for about 2 years. She had almost forgotten that there was such a place. When they arrived, Su Nianhua bought a box of stinky tofu. He drizzled it with spicy sauce and sprinkled a handful of coriander on it. He took 2 bamboo sticks and handed them to Yi Huanyan. Try it and evaluate the overall standard of the stinky tofu on Old Street. Yi Huanyan didn't want to disappoint him, so she tasted a piece of the stinky tofu. It's so salty. Really? Let me try. Su Nianhua secretly took off his mask and tasted it. He then quickly put it back on. He could vaguely see the chewing behind the mask. He furrowed his brows and snorted, "It's really salty," but with the mask on, he couldn't spit it out. He could only frown and force himself to swallow it. Yi Huanyan couldn't help but chuckle when she saw his mute appearance. A light breeze brushed past her cheeks, bringing a few strands of hair and brushing past her eyelashes. She narrowed her eyes slightly. They were like 2 crescent moons in the water, bright and flawless. Su Nianhua couldn't help but stare blankly for a while. Yi Huanyan smelled the stinky tofu and suddenly felt nauseous. She threw the box of stinky tofu into a nearby trash can in front of the boss and bent over to retch, attracting the attention of passers-by. Her eyes flickered as she shouted, "This restaurant is too disgusting. I'm going to puke. Seriously, let's go to another restaurant." A few girls who were about to pay the bill immediately retracted their hands, glanced at the boss, and ran away. The boss's face was ashen. He looked at the backs of Yi Huanyan and the others, as if he wanted to fry them like they were stinky tofu. Su Nianhua stood at the side and laughed out loud. "Isn't it unkind to tease the boss like that? I'm really going to throw up. That smell is definitely not clean." Yi Huanyan waved her hand. "Let's go to another restaurant." Su Nianhua only thought that she was joking. In addition, he had been eating well after that, so he didn't take it to heart. They walked to the end of the street. Not a single stall from 10 years ago could be found. However, there was no lack of delicious stinky tofu, but they still couldn't find the feeling of back then. The sky gradually darkened, and there were more people on the old street. The streetlights gradually lit up, illuminating the dazzling lineup of stalls by the roadside. The joy that those colorful headbands could bring when they were young seemed to be gone forever. There was no lack of bars in the old street that were decorated in an outstanding style. They were all quiet bars. 10 years ago, Yi Huanyan and Su Nianhua, who were both underage, were blocked outside the door. They could only stand outside and listen to the resident singer sing. At the entrance of Time Bar, Yi Huanyan stopped and watched for a while. "I want to drink some wine." Su Nianhua's eyes flickered. "Let's go. I'll accompany you." The bar wasn't big. The walls were filled with beer bottles. On a red brick platform, there was a standing microphone. A male singer with long hair was gently playing the guitar. The plectrum swept across the strings, mixing with the crisp sound of the guitar. This male singer was singing a folk song. His voice was deep and hoarse, very heavy. "My most beloved girl, accompany me to a faraway place. I will love you forever. You have to believe me." As soon as they sat down, the waiter came over with the wine list. Yi Huanyan glanced at Su Nianhua, her eyes asking for recommendations. 2 glasses of tequila sunrise, and a dessert. Su Nianhua was familiar with ordering drinks. He was very familiar with bars. This was also related to his experience of singing in bars overseas for so many years. Yi Huanyan had never been to a bar before. Even when she traveled with her roommates to the edge of Irai, which was famous for its hunting of beauties, she had never stepped into those brightly lit bars. She liked the scenery and nature more than these artificial liveliness. 2 glasses of tequila sunrise were served. With a dark blue background, the upper part was a vague orange-yellow, and the last part was red. Just like the sunrise, the red half of the sun rose from the sea. The alcohol content isn't high, but 1 glass is enough, Su Nianhua reminded. Yi Huanyan nodded and took a sip with a straw. It was sweet, and the alcohol taste was very light. It was more like a beverage than alcohol. We've been here before. I said that my family didn't support me playing music. What if I came out of home one day without a single cent? You dragged me here. At that time, Yi Huanyan swore that the bar would earn them a few hundred yuan a night. It was enough for them to eat several McDonald's meals. Thinking of this, Su Nianhua smiled. In the end, because we were underage, we weren't even allowed to enter the bar. It's because you're an idiot. Yi Huanyan interrupted him and said angrily, It's all because of you that we weren't allowed to enter. They asked you how old you were, and you said 16. Would they let you in? That day, she had specially instructed him over the phone to change into the casual suit he had worn during the school anniversary celebration. Before going to the bar, she took out the hair gel she had brought from home from her bag and combed his bangs into a slicked-back hairstyle, making him look more mature. In the end, when they reached the bar, everything was exposed. Actually, you didn't want to go in on purpose, right? Yi Huanyan crossed her arms and looked at him with a smile. Su Nianhua raised his eyebrows. They say that the bar is very messy. At that time, I couldn't guarantee that I would be able to bring you out safely, so I let it go. So it was like that. Yi Huanyan was still smiling. I remember that it was raining outside that night. The bar was singing a song related to rain. I can't remember the lyrics, but I think it was very nice. Young girls' feelings were always poetic. At that time, whether it was eating stinky tofu by the roadside or standing in front of the bar to listen to songs in the rain, she felt that it was romantic from the bottom of her heart. Give me a moment. Su Nianhua's eyes suddenly turned. He got up and walked toward the bar singer. He lowered his head and whispered something in the singer's ear. The man handed the guitar to him. The sound of the guitar was clear and gentle, like the water of a stream flowing over the reef. Su Nianhua attracted the attention of everyone as soon as he opened his mouth. Chapter 183. His voice was unique, but he was wearing a hat and his head was lowered in the shadows, so no one could see his face clearly. Yi Huanyan listened attentively for a while, and there was surprise in her eyes. This song was the same one from back then. What I like is the summer wind, the autumn rain, and you every day. What I want is the sunshine, the air, the 3 meals of the 4 seasons, and our love. Yi Huanyan only remembered the autumn rain, but because it was raining that day, the whole song was actually a cheerful and bright love song. Su Nianhua actually sang it word for word. This song was originally written by the singer in the bar, so it was surprising that he could still remember it. His voice was so recognizable that some people in the bar had already cast doubtful glances in the direction of the high platform, and some people stood up and tried to approach to size him up. Yi Huanyan was so engrossed in the song that she didn't notice anything strange. When the climax of the song came, someone in the crowd in the bar screamed, Su Nianhua! When this shout came out, the crowd was stunned at first, and then they all exclaimed. After being recognized, Su Nianhua simply didn't hide anymore. He only raised his finger to his lips and gently made a shua sound, indicating that they should not spread the news. This magical appeal actually made the people in the bar follow the beat. Especially after Su Nianhua took the lead to sing the chorus twice, he actually led the people in the bar to sing together. In the end, Su Nianhua held the microphone and looked at Yi Huanyan outside the crowd. His tone was young and gentle. What I like is always you. His meaning was unclear, and the guests below who followed the beat didn't know who he was saying this to. They just thought that he was saying this to the fans below the stage, just like in a concert, to them. The bar was full of people, and the cheers were unprecedentedly high. Yi Huanyan looked at Su Nianhua, who was surrounded by the crowd, and her heart was filled with emotions. It would be a lie to say that she wasn't moved. The people around her were all changing, both physically and mentally. However, Su Nianhua seemed to be the same Lu Shen from back then. He was always that handsome and bright young man, and even more cheerful and confident than before. After leaving the bar, they left the old street as fast as they could. It turned out that this was a wise choice, because 10 minutes after they left, the bar was taken over by fans who heard the news. The bar's turnover that night was probably more than the total turnover of the entire season. The bar owner should have given us a free bill. Your endorsement fee is too expensive. Sitting in the car, Yi Huanyan couldn't help but tease. Su Nianhua raised his eyebrows. My endorsement fee is only worth 2 cocktails? Then it's free for life. After drinking that cup of wine, Yi Huanyan's face was flushed. Although she wasn't drunk, it was still wine after all. Drinking it made her blush a little. Su Nianhua saw Yi Huanyan's slightly red cheeks from the rearview mirror. His heart skipped a beat, and he felt his throat dry up. Yen, I'm serious about what I just said. Yi Huanyan was slightly stunned. After all, he hadn't asked her face to face for a response when he had confessed to her through the crowd in the bar just now. She thought that she would just play dumb and forget about it. Su Nianhua should know what she meant, so he wouldn't bring it up again. She didn't expect that he would bring it up. There was silence in the car for a while. Only the sound of the wind outside the window could be heard. If you still want to stay here, I'll take you home to see my parents. My mother doesn't object to us anymore. She also mentioned before that she wants me to take you to see her. If you don't like it here, we can go abroad. As long as you want to go, I can go with you. Su Nianhua's tone was very sincere, and the car slowed down. Lu Shen, you know everything, don't you? After the annual meeting, even though they still kept in touch, Su Nianhua never mentioned what happened in the hotel in front of her again. He never mentioned Ling Han either. Perhaps it was to avoid awkwardness, but part of the reason must be that he already knew that she had an unusual relationship with Ling Han. She had thought about this before, but now that she heard him say this, she knew that he already knew everything. As for how he found out, she didn't know. There was no such thing as an airtight wall in this world. Su Nianhua hurriedly explained, "Don't misunderstand. After the annual meeting, I was afraid that reporters would leak the photos and videos, so I got someone to check it out. If anything happens, I'll have a strategy to deal with it in advance." "If something happens, what's your strategy?" Su Nianhua was slightly stunned. He took a deep breath. "If you're willing, just announce that we're getting married." There was a long silence in the car. After a while, Yi Huanyan sighed and said, "I don't want to." Su Nianhua's eyes gradually dimmed. He stepped on the accelerator and sped up. He didn't speak for a long time as he sped on the highway around the city. Yi Huanyan's expression didn't change. She knew that Su Nianhua was a person who knew what he was doing. He had always been like that. She took a deep breath and slowly exhaled. Her tone was gentle as she spoke. "When my mother married me into the Ling family, you had just left the country. At that time, I was actually quite depressed. On one hand, I felt that what Auntie Lu said made sense. I really couldn't help you in your future. On the other hand, I felt that I didn't go to the airport to send you off in the end, and I regretted it very much. After that, for a long time, I wondered if you would have stayed if I had gone to the airport to send you off that day. I would have." Su Nianhua's tone was firm. "I know." Yi Huanyan smiled. "After I understood that, I didn't feel so sad anymore. I don't know why, but it was as though I had let go of everything. At that time, I felt that there were a lot of things to consider when you love someone. After a few years, I felt that when you love someone, you don't have to think about anything. Love is love." She said all this to tell Sun Yanhua that she didn't give up on him because of Ling Han, nor was it because of any other man. From the beginning to the end, their relationship had never been affected by other feelings. From the beginning to the end, it was both of their own choices. Sun Yanhua pursed his lips. He couldn't find the words to say. When Yi Huanyan loved him, she had a lot of things to consider. Would her mother be looked down upon by the Liu family? Would they be able to get into the same university in the future with such a huge difference in grades? But when she fell in love with Ling Han, she suddenly realized that there were some things to consider, but she had already fallen in love with him. Yi Huanyan beat around the bush to give him a way out of this embarrassing situation. But the more she acted like this, the more upset he felt. After all these years, the only person he had ever loved was her. How could he bear to part with her? Especially when he found out that she didn't have a good time with Ling Han. Just pretend that I didn't say anything. In the end, he held back the anger in his heart. Yen, I won't force you to do anything. I just hope that you can be happier when you're with me. When she heard that, Yi Huanyan smiled. I'm pretty happy today. She didn't have many friends. After graduation, the only one who stayed in Lonjiang City was Ji Xiaoye. Now that she was so busy, she hadn't seen her in a long time. I'm here. Outside the window, they were already at the entrance of the Jinjiang Park Villa area. Yi Huanyan's voice was tinged with a hint of strange emotion. Chapter 184. When Yi Huanyan got home, Ling Han hadn't returned yet. He was probably still in the hospital. Lingling asked if she wanted to eat something, but she just waved her hand weakly and went upstairs. The black MPV drove in from the entrance of the residential area, going in the opposite direction from the sapphire blue sedan. The two men's eyes met briefly in the air, secretly competing with each other. Only the parties involved knew the reason for this. When Ling Han got home, his face was a little gloomy. Yi Huanyan had already finished showering and was sitting by the bed drinking milk. Seeing Ling Han standing at the foot of the bed, Yi Huanyan's face tensed up. Is she okay? Lingling was the one who brought the milk up. When she saw Ling Han, she left the room and closed the door. Her right calf is fractured, and one of her ribs is broken. If the lampstand was a few inches to the side and hit her face, her acting career would be over. It's just a lampstand, something that can be fixed with tens of thousands of yuan. Why did it become like this? Don't you think you owe me an explanation? Ling Han's tone was very cold, as if he was accusing Yi Huanyan of wrongdoing. Yi Huanyan's face turned cold. Her fingers holding the cup of milk were red, but she didn't put it down. I am responsible for this. It has nothing to do with anyone else. I will take responsibility. How are you going to take responsibility? Ling Han took a step closer, his face cold. Do you have money or face? Yi Huanyan was not afraid of anything. Ling Han was very annoyed by the way she dared to take responsibility no matter how big the problem was. The bedroom was silent for a few seconds. Then Yi Huanyan gritted her teeth and spat out 4 words. It's none of your business. When the accident happened in the afternoon, he already decided that she was responsible. He deliberately embarrassed her in front of so many people and didn't even give her the right to go to the hospital. Why was he still pretending now? As soon as she finished speaking, the warm cup of milk in her hand suddenly flipped over. Clang! It fell to the ground and broke into pieces. Milky white liquid splashed everywhere. Ling Han pinched Yi Huanyan's wrist, his face ashen. I don't need to care. Who do you want to care? Yi Huanyan gritted his teeth, but he couldn't help but groan in pain. After approaching her, Ling Han could faintly smell a trace of alcohol. His expression immediately changed, and he increased the strength of his hand. Yi Huanyan was in so much pain that her facial features were twisted together. Such a big thing happened in the afternoon. Why didn't you stay in the company and go drinking? Do you think it's as simple as paying for Shang Anren's injury? Yi Huanyan, how capable do you think you are? Do you know the collapse of the lampstand? If you change to another artist, it's not surprising to sue you for intentional injury. It was not that Yi Huanyan didn't hear those discussions in the company. It was not a matter of a day or two that she didn't get along with Shang Enren. The words of those people in the company were passed to her ears. So as soon as this happened today, rumors spread behind her back, saying that she deliberately hurt Shang Enren, and 3 men became a tiger. She just thought these rumors were ridiculous. Which company didn't have some conspiracy theorists? But at this moment, Ling Han also said that to her? Did he think she deliberately hurt Shang Enren? Suddenly there was a burst of fire in her chest. She struggled angrily, and her face was strangely pink. Let her sue. If she has the ability, sue. I don't believe that a lampstand that collapsed by itself can win the lawsuit. Why do I need you to give me face? He had already told Yi Huanyan that, if it were another artist, it was for his sake that Shang Enren would not pursue the matter. But Yi Huanyan didn't appreciate it. This was something she hadn't done. Why should she be led by the nose? And Ling Han came forward to let Shang Enren do her a favor? Ling Han frowned when he saw her angry expression that he had never seen before. He was at a loss for what to do. The collapse of the lampstand is not a problem. Shang Enren will not really sue Yi Huanyan for this matter. It's just that it's hard to explain to Shang Enren's fans. What he wants Shang Enren to do is to find a way to calm the fans' anger at the agency's poor care and not to lead to Yi Huanyan. Yi Huanyan, calm down. He grabbed her wrist and raised the volume. Yi Huanyan stared at him with red eyes and murmured, I didn't do it. Even you don't believe me. Originally, he was full of anger and dissatisfaction, but under her fragile eyes, he was immediately defeated. This change in mood came too quickly and caught people off guard. How much did Su Nianhua take her out to drink? Why did she become like this now? She was angry and annoyed, but there was nothing she could do. Ling Han rubbed her into his arms and said softly, I don't believe you. I'll solve it. This hug was like a dream. Using the delayed drunkenness, he felt like he was in a dream. Tears burst out of the dam and flooded. After crying for a while, she fell asleep in a daze, as if someone had covered her with a quilt. It was so gentle and skillful. It was probably Ling Ling. Late at night, the bedside phone rang, and Ling Han moved slightly, which startled Yi Huanyan. However, she only turned over and mumbled a few words before hugging his arm and continuing to sleep. Ling Han's brows relaxed, and he looked up at the flashing phone beside the bed. It was a call from Shang Enren. He hesitated for a few seconds before pressing the hang-up button. At this moment, Yi Huanyan was nestled in his arms like an obedient little beast, sleeping sweetly and peacefully. He could not bear to break this image, so he simply turned the phone on silent mode. He turned over and pulled her into his arms, smelling the unique fragrance of her body before falling asleep. It was a good night's sleep, a rare good night's sleep. The next morning, at dawn, Ling Han's biological clock woke him up naturally. There were more than a dozen missed calls on his phone. Other than the first 3 from Shang Enren, the rest were all from Qiao Mu. On the other end of the phone, Qiao Mu's voice was very solemn and nervous. Director Ling, something happened. What's wrong? Ling Han only thought it was a work matter, so he did not take it seriously. He glanced at the gradually rising sun outside the curtains, got up, and walked to the bathroom in his room to wash up. Shang Enren's studio released a complaint against Secretary Yi, and the internet is already in an uproar. The complaint accused Secretary Yi of intentional injury. I called to ask, and Shang Enren's agent is preparing to file a case in court this morning. What's going on? Ling Han's face darkened. Maybe it's because a new show is about to start, and the studio planned the hype. After all, this matter is related to Secretary Yi, so I called you as soon as possible. You see. Find someone to stop Shang Enren's agent. Also, find a way to suppress the news first. It was released last night. It's been so long, I'm afraid it can't be suppressed. Qiao Mu was a bit troubled. Suppress as much as you can. Ling Han's tone was extremely cold. I'll be at the company in 20 minutes. Contact all the people in charge of Shang Enren's studio and the publicity team to the headquarters for a meeting. Chapter 185. Shang Enren was such a big shot. Although she was an artist of the pleasure group, her studio was self-operated and had great autonomy. Whether it was publicity, packaging, endorsements, or TV series, they were not controlled by the pleasure group. However, this did not mean that they could do whatever they wanted, especially when they touched the boss's bottom line. When Ling Han arrived at the company with a gloomy face, the staff of Shang Enren's studio had almost all arrived. The latest batch of morning newspapers had come out. As soon as Ling Han entered the company, he got it. The headline was on the front page. Shang Enren, the movie queen, offended the female supervisor of the pleasure group. She was seriously injured and has been hospitalized. With a bang, the newspaper fell on the big conference table. What is this? Who can explain it to me? Ling Han's voice resounded throughout the conference room. It was so cold that the two men who were about to yawn shut their mouths and lowered their heads, not daring to say a word. In the end, the main person in charge of the studio came out to speak. He was a slightly fat man, not tall, wearing a pair of black-rimmed glasses. He looked like a programmer and spoke in a nervous tone. We just learned about it. Sister Sue didn't discuss it with us. When we called to ask, Sister Sue said it was a private matter and had nothing to do with publicity. As soon as he said this, the people around him echoed. Ling Han's eyes flashed with coldness. A private matter will release an accusation statement on the internet? The person in charge was nervous. Although the object of the accusation was Secretary Yi, the favorite of the boss, it should not make the boss so angry. Was it true that Shang Enren had fallen out of favor and the boss's secretary had taken the position as the recent rumors said? Was that why there was such a big show now? President Ling, this really has nothing to do with us. Except for me, who just learned the news, the others in the studio still don't know what is going on. According to your request yesterday, we all blocked the news and didn't dare to tell the reporters outside that Enren was injured. After the person in charge finished these words, he was already in a cold sweat. When he couldn't figure out the boss's mind, he felt that everything he said was wrong. Fortunately, Chow Mu hurried over and whispered something into Ling Han's ear. Ling Han's face darkened, and he left the conference room without another word, leaving behind a room full of people looking at each other in bewilderment. Chow Mu was originally following Ling Han, but when she reached the door, she remembered that there was still a room full of people. She quickly turned around and waved her hand. Thank you for your hard work, everyone. The meeting is over, so you can leave first. I still have matters to attend to with Director Ling. Ling Han was heading for the hospital. Chow Mu had just found out that this matter indeed had nothing to do with Shang Enren's studio. It was completely Shang Enren's personal action, and the people in the studio were all kept in the dark and completely unaware. Jinjiang Park Villa. Yi Huanyan rubbed his aching head and got up from the bed. He was uncomfortably thirsty. Someone had placed a glass of water beside the bed. She picked it up and gulped down more than half of it. She lay on the bed in a daze for a while. She seemed to be in a trance about what had happened last night. She vaguely remembered that she had an argument with Ling Han and then fell asleep. How could she sleep like that? She didn't want to get up. She knew that her alcohol tolerance wasn't very good, but she only drank a glass of cocktail. She didn't expect the after effects to be so strong. She changed her clothes and went to work. As soon as she arrived at the entrance of the company, she saw a group of reporters surrounding the front desk with cameras in their hands. Some were sitting on the sofa, some were standing, and some were negotiating something with the front desk. She frowned and swiped her card to enter the door while asking a woman dressed as a secretary passing by. What's going on? Why are there so many reporters at the company today? When the woman saw that it was Yi Huanyan, she revealed a surprised expression and hurriedly pulled Yi Huanyan into the elevator. Secretary Yi, why are you here today? Why can't I come? Yi Huanyan was a bit confused. The female secretary frowned. Didn't you watch the news? These reporters are all looking for you. Under the reminder of the female secretary, Yi Huanyan checked today's headlines. After seeing such an obvious title as Pleasure's high-level female director surnamed Yi, it was difficult not to contact her. No wonder today at work, she met the company's colleagues looking at her a little strange. Pleasure's people naturally knew that this was Yi Huanyan, but the reporters outside didn't know. Now, even if Yi Huanyan walked in front of them, they might not know that this was the female director mentioned in the newspaper. After reading the content of the news, Yi Huanyan just sneered, but didn't care much on the surface. She just thanked the female secretary who reminded her. The female secretary was a little surprised and kindly reminded her, "Secretary Yi, I think this is a big deal. Why don't you take a vacation first?" Yi Huanyan smiled. "It says in this report that I deliberately hurt Shang Enren. They dare to write such nonsense. Either the newspaper is deliberately mystifying, or Shang Enren's studio is hyping. I heard that their new play is being promoted." The female secretary suddenly realized and nodded again and again. "No wonder. I was wondering what was wrong with Shang Enren. She is the future boss's wife of the company. Why do you have to make things difficult for the people in your own company? And it sounds too unreliable to deliberately hurt her." Yi Huanyan thought the same as Ling Han. At first, she thought it was just a gimmick of Shang Enren's studio. She didn't expect that Shang Enren really wanted to frame her. The group of reporters had been downstairs and refused to leave. As long as they went upstairs, they had to swipe their cards. There were 2 gates, and there was an independent gate on each floor. Even if they disguised as cleaning aunties, they couldn't get in. In the end, it seriously affected the normal work of Pleasure. After Yi Huanyan received the call downstairs, she was a little angry. There should be a limit to the hype. She stepped on the 12-centimeter high heels and went straight to the first floor. Xiao Dong couldn't stop her. The front desk was still arguing. Several reporters used all kinds of tricks to see Yi Huanyan for an interview. "If you stay here any longer, we will call the security." The girl at the front desk was on the verge of collapse. She couldn't squeeze out a good face. "Call security, now." A stern and clear voice suddenly sounded, with an unquestionable aura. Everyone looked at the source of the voice in unison. "Yi!" The girl at the front desk shouted in surprise, but then covered her mouth and frowned at the reporters around her. "It's been a long time, and you still haven't called the security. It has seriously affected our work. Just now, the courier was blocked at the door when he came to receive the package. Do you know?" Yi Huanyan's voice was decisive and tough. When the girl at the front desk heard that someone was backing her up, she didn't have to bear the charge of perfunctory guests. She immediately picked up the phone and contacted the security room. "Master Wang, let the people in the security room gather. We have more than a dozen reporters here. Please help to send them out." When they heard that she was really calling the security, the reporters' faces suddenly changed and they were anxious. "We won't go. We just want to talk to Director Yi and do a simple interview. We want the truth." Chapter 186. The receptionist had finished her call and was looking at Yi Huanyan nervously. The security guard will be here in 5 minutes. You can go upstairs to work first. Leave this to us." The receptionist was smart. She knew that she could not call out Yi Huanyan's name. She was lucky that the reporters did not hear her. Otherwise, she would be in big trouble. "Miss, we are looking for Supervisor Yi. Please arrange for us to leave as soon as we see Supervisor Yi." The reporters were still unwilling to let her go. Yi Huanyan looked at the dozens of reporters in front of her. They were looking at the cameras and holding the microphones of different media companies. She realized that it would be difficult to get rid of them. Not to mention whether she could get them out of here unscathed. If she broke their cameras, they would write something to smear Pleasure Company. It was not a joke. The board of directors was not convinced by Ling Han. It would be troublesome if the stock market fluctuated because of the news. "You want to see Supervisor Yi? You will leave as soon as you see her?" she asked. The leading female reporter nodded. "Yes, we will leave as soon as we see her." "Then you can leave. I am her." Yi Huanyan looked calm and cold. Her aura was not inferior to any of Pleasure Company's senior management. The leading female reporter was stunned at first and asked in a puzzled tone. You? Secretary Yi? Xiao Dong had just got off the elevator and chased after Yi Huanyan from afar. She confirmed Yi Huanyan's identity. Yi Huanyan stared at the female reporter in front of her without changing her expression. You have seen her. You can leave now. Don't make it too ugly. Manager Ling has a good relationship with the bosses of all the major news companies. After saying this, she turned and was about to leave. You mean you admit that you have an affair with Ling Han? The female reporter's voice was a little sharp. After it rang out in the hall, Yi Huanyan was surrounded by reporters who had reacted in an instant. Miss Yi, please answer Shang Anren's accusation. Is it true that you deliberately hurt someone? I heard that you've always had a bad relationship with Shang Anren. You've repeatedly stopped her from seeing Ling Han. Is there any other unspeakable relationship between you and Ling Han besides the relationship between superior and subordinate? What do you think of the rumors about you being a mistress? In an instant, Yi Huanyan was surrounded by microphones. Her expression stiffened and her mind was in chaos. The female reporter who was facing her lifted her chin slightly and looked at her with contempt. Miss Yi, you deliberately hurt Shang Anren because you admire Ling Han and are jealous of Shang Anren, right? Yi Huanyan's expression darkened. I didn't hurt her on purpose. I'm responsible for this, but it's only because I'm the person in charge of this project. According to my understanding, after this project is completed, the person in charge will be directly transferred to be the general manager of Pleasure Advertising Company. As a secretary, your qualifications are far from enough. Did you accept this project because of your relationship with Ling Han? The female reporter was aggressive, and her questions were all about the key links. Sorry, this is my company's confidential information. I can't tell you casually. Yi Huanyan frowned and was about to squeeze through the crowd. At this time, the security guard had already arrived. With the fastest speed, he even dragged and pulled away the reporters surrounding Yi Huanyan. Xiao Dong protected Yi Huanyan and frowned. Sister Yi, let's go. Is it a company secret, or do you have a guilty conscience? The one who asked the loudest question was still the female reporter. Yi Huanyan was pulled by Xiao Dong to take 2 steps. When she heard this, she was angry. You're making irresponsible remarks here without any evidence. How dare you start rumors and make trouble in front of me? The project allocation is our company's confidential information. I can't comment, but I can tell you that Shang Anren accused me of deliberately hurting people. If I really had any problem, I wouldn't be standing here unscathed. If you want to interview me, you should go to the detention center. The female reporter was refuted by her, and her beautiful face turned pale. She frowned. At this time, behind the crowd of reporters, 3 men in police uniforms walked into the hall. The leader looked over the crowd and fixed his eyes on Yi Huanyan, who looked aggressive at the moment. You are Yi Huanyan? The reporters turned around and saw 3 people in blue police uniforms walking in. The hall was silent for a moment. Yi Huanyan, right? This is a temporary detention warrant. Please come with us. Someone accused you of deliberately hurting people. We need you to cooperate with the investigation. The leader's voice was not loud, but it was very calm. It exploded a wave of thunder in the quiet hall. The female reporter was the first to react. She patted the camera beside her and pointed the camera in her direction. Now it's the first-hand news. The case of the movie queen Shang Anren accusing the female director of Pleasure of deliberately hurting people may have been filed. Now it's 10:45 in the morning. Yi is negotiating with the police and will be taken to the West City Public Security Bureau for investigation. The camera was aimed at Yi Huanyan. The leader of the 3 policemen raised his hand to block the camera and frowned. Don't shoot. It's not confirmed yet. Just cooperate with the investigation. The female reporter didn't care. She still exaggerated her report. The suspect Yi has been taken away by the police. I don't know what method pleasure will use to quell the anger of many fans of the movie Queen Shang Anren. Under the watchful eyes of the public, Yi Huanyan was taken away by the police, which has caused a great uproar on the internet. Some people dug up Yi Huanyan's story and found that she was very similar to the popular heroine of Su Nianhua's concert. There were many people who poured dirty water on her. Among them, there was a section of, "This woman surnamed Yi is a bus. She is crazy about getting to the top. Not only did she seduce the boss, but she also showed kindness to Su Nianhua." Various stories based on such remarks emerged endlessly. So this matter inevitably involved Su Nianhua. Fortunately, Su Nianhua came out to make a statement at the first time and personally appeased his fans. Don't believe the rumors. Stay calm. Don't make a fuss. Don't tear. Most of the fans were more obedient and didn't continue to attack randomly on the internet. For the behavior of Shang Anren's fans who forced them into the water, most people maintained a bystander attitude, and some people who really didn't like to see it posted 2 clarifications on the internet. This matter has nothing to do with my brother Nian Nian. The words of one anti-fan don't represent all the fans. Yi Huanyan had never thought that she would be in the police station because of being accused of deliberately hurting people in this life. The police station had detailed information. The dark and thin policeman didn't ask much. He went straight to the point and asked the process of the lampstand incident. Someone next to him took notes. You said that the lampstand was broken, so it needed someone to hold it. Why wasn't it repaired before? Yi Huanyan was slightly stunned. Originally, she didn't know much about this matter. It was the prop team who was in charge of it. However, after the incident yesterday afternoon, the prop team deliberately came to her and explained to her. Only then did she know. I didn't plan to repair it. I plan to replace it directly. The lampstand was imported. It will take some time to transport it from abroad. Why are you holding it? The dark and thin policeman looked up and stared at her with an unkind face. Chapter 187. Yi Huanyan's expression did not change. The person holding the lampstand was called to be in charge of the light. I just happen to be free. So you've been holding the lampstand? Yes. Hearing this, the dark and thin policeman looked at her meaningfully. Is there a grudge between you and Shang Anren? The atmosphere suddenly changed. Yi Huanyan frowned and said firmly, No. As far as I know, Shang Anren is Ling Han's girlfriend. The dark and thin policeman stared at Yi Huanyan. He could clearly feel that her face stiffened when she said this. Is she your boss's girlfriend? Yi Huanyan was stunned for a few seconds. You should ask him. There was a glimmer of light in the eyes of the dark and thin policeman. He did not continue to ask this question and changed the topic. What's the relationship between you and your boss, Ling Han? Brother and sister in name, Yi Huanyan answered truthfully. Indeed, judging from the household registration, she was now the daughter of the Ling family. She was brother and sister in name with Ling Han. What about in reality? The dark and thin policeman caught the loophole in her words. Yi Huanyan was stunned. She looked unhappy. Obviously, she was very resistant to this question. I didn't hurt Shang Anren on purpose. Whether you believe it or not, you can't arrest her just because of her one-sided words, right? The dark and thin policeman sneered. I've seen a lot of stubborn people. If I don't show you some evidence, you'll really be a rogue. Our police station is useless. After saying this, he turned on the computer beside him and clicked on a video page. The video was the scene in the studio that day. At the beginning, Yi Huanyan walked to the lampstand and held it. The cameraman was not in the video, but his voice was always there. Smile. Halfway through the video, Yi Huanyan suddenly put her hand into her coat pocket. The dark and thin policeman pressed the pause button and then looked up at Yi Huanyan. What are you doing at this time? Yi Huanyan was slightly stunned. She had forgotten to pick up the phone. You're answering the phone. You know that there's something wrong with the lampstand, but you still dare to let go of the lampstand to answer the phone. Shouldn't I suspect that you have other motives? Yi Huanyan frowned. You're talking to yourself. The lampstand didn't move at all. It didn't look like it would collapse at all. My phone rang. I thought it was a friend looking for me, so I picked it up. But just as you were answering the phone, the lampstand fell. After saying this, the dark-skinned police officer clicked on the touch screen and the video continued to play. The moment Yi Huanyan picked up the phone, the entire lampstand fell to the ground at a speed visible to the naked eye. The lampstand had already broken away from Yi Huanyan's hand. At this time, the dark-skinned police officer paused the video again and stared coldly at Yi Huanyan. Do you see it clearly? The direction of the lampstand's inclination is the direction of the lighting master. If it falls at this angle, Shang Anren will at most hurt her ankle, not her whole calf. What do you mean? Yi Huanyan's face tightened. The video continued to play. In the next second, Yi Huanyan suddenly grabbed the lampstand. The weight of the lampstand and the inertia were not something Yi Huanyan could stop. But with her support, the direction of the whole lampstand's inclination deviated by 2 inches, and it fell straight in the direction of Shang Anren. The video ended. If Shang Anren hadn't dodged quickly, it would have hit the back of her head directly from this position. The dark-skinned police officer stared at Yi Huanyan, trying to find a flaw in her face. Yi Huanyan was indeed a little flustered, but it was not the fluster of being exposed, but the fluster of anger. Aren't you going to help the lampstand fall? If I don't help it, won't I deliberately hurt people? And you think too highly of me. Am I a physicist? Do I know how to calculate the inclination angle and the possibility of being injured or killed? The tanned and thin policeman's face darkened. He seemed to feel that Yi Huanyan's attitude was very improper, and his voice suddenly turned cold. Yi Huanyan, based on this video and the fact that you have enough motive to commit the crime, you'd better confess. This way you can be sentenced less and suffer less. Why should I admit to something I didn't do? Until now, Yi Huanyan still felt that this was a joke. The inexplicable video, the inexplicable arrest, and the inexplicable interrogation, and she, the so-called suspect, did nothing at all. The dark-skinned police officer snorted coldly. Since you don't admit it, you can stay here. When can I leave? Although Yi Huanyan had never studied the law, she was not blind to the law. Such little evidence could not prove that she deliberately hurt people. Even if she wanted to be detained to cooperate with the investigation, she could not be detained for more than 48 hours. Wait for someone to bail you out. Otherwise, you'll have to stay here for 48 hours. The dark-skinned police officer said coldly with a gloomy expression. After leaving the interrogation room, the dark-skinned police officer glanced at the officer who was taking notes beside him. I asked you to investigate the employees of Pleasure and Yi Huanyan. Have you done it? The young policeman nodded respectfully. Yes, everyone says that she's very capable and kind. Boss, could this be a misunderstanding? Whether it's a misunderstanding or not is another matter. But since she's being accused of deliberately hurting people, we can't just ignore it. Did you find out the relationship between Yi Huanyan and Ling Han? We did some investigation, but they're all rumors. None of them are credible. The people of Pleasure all said that they heard it from someone, but we couldn't find out who said it. Especially when we investigated a few people who are usually honest, they all said that Yi Huanyan has a strict work attitude. They said that there is nothing between her and the boss, and that there is definitely no affair. They made a promise. The dark-skinned police officer sneered. Everyone in Pleasure doesn't know that they are brother and sister. They even made a promise. Ridiculous. Then, boss, should we continue to investigate? Investigate. Doesn't Yi Huanyan have a best friend? You can start with her and find out if there is an affair between her and Ling Han. If there is, this can be closer to the murder of love. Murder of love? Isn't it deliberately hurting people? How did it become murder? The young policeman looked nervous. The dark-skinned police officer slapped the young policeman's head and said angrily, "Nonsense. Shang Anren is only injured now. That's intentional hurting. If the lamp frame hits Shang Anren's head, wouldn't it be murder of love? When the time comes, This case will be waiting for us to work on. The young policeman rubbed his head and nodded repeatedly. But why did he feel that the boss's random reasoning was a little unreliable? In the hospital, Ling Han stood in front of Shang Anren's bed with a cold expression on his face. Facing the chair that Sister Su pulled over, he did not sit down. He stood at the end of the bed like a statue. Without waiting for Shang Anren to show her signature smile, he coldly spat out a sentence. Anren, use other methods to promote the new drama. Yi Huanyan's matter, withdraw the lawsuit. New drama promotion. Shang Anren stopped smiling. Do you think I'm using my own life safety to hype up? Chapter 188. Enren, it's no good for you to sue Yi Huanyan. A female artist involved in a lawsuit will only delay her work. What kind of compensation do you need? You can talk to her in private. Ling Han's face is cold, and he looks very rational. Han, a secretary is worth you speaking for her personally? Her workability is obvious to all. She is very important to the company. In this way, Shang Anren must have believed it before, but since she knew the relationship between them, she didn't believe a word. Shang Anren stared at him for a long time. Usually, she wouldn't dare to stare at him with such a look, but now she can. The more it came to this kind of time, the more clear she was in her heart that how much Ling Han was tolerant of her, how much he cared about that woman in his heart. Han, I just want to be fair. Haven't you ever thought that she really hurt me on purpose? Ling Han frowned but didn't speak. It's true that she's your secretary. Usually, she doesn't treat me well, so I tolerate it for your sake. But this time, if I didn't dodge quickly, I would have lost my life. Why don't I settle it privately? I believe that justice has a long arm. If she really didn't do it on purpose, what's the use of suing her? Shang Anren's eyes were shining. When he looked at Ling Han, he seemed sad. I'm tired. Let's talk about it later. I just want to have a rest today. Seeing her like this, Ling Han's face was a little gloomy. I'm afraid the withdrawal of the lawsuit has to wait for Shang Anren's mood to stabilize. Take good care of her. When he left, he told Shang Anren's agent. Sister Su sent him to the door and sighed helplessly. President Ling, in fact, Anren is not such an unforgiving person. If Secretary Yi is willing to apologize and promise not to go against her in the future, I think Anren will not pursue it anymore. Ling Han furrowed his brows. In the detention house, Ji Xiaoye signed and stood at the door, waiting for Yi Huanyan to come out. A black commercial car slowly stopped at the entrance, and a familiar figure got out of the car. With a height of 187 meters, he was particularly eye-catching even in the night. Ji Xiaoye was stunned at first, then frowned. Ling Han. At this time, Yi Huanyan had just come out. When she heard Ji Xiaoye's voice, she was stunned. She slowly raised her head and followed her gaze. She saw Ling Han walking in with a cold look in his eyes. Xiaoyu, let's go. I want to stay at your place for the next 2 days. She tugged on Ji Xiaoye's arm. Her words were obviously directed at Ling Han. I have something to tell you. Ling Han's expression darkened. I didn't. Yi Huanyan's tone was very cold. She tilted her shoulder 2 inches to avoid his outstretched hand. Her expression was very resistant. I already have a way to solve this matter. You have to listen to me. Ling Han's voice made Ji Xiaoye stop in her tracks and pull Yi Huanyan. Yen, wait a minute. She had been paying attention to the news for the past 2 days. She knew how serious the content of the report was. If Shang Anren refused to let her go, not to mention the compensation, she was afraid that she would have to go to jail according to the degree of injury. Yi Huanyan had no power or influence. She couldn't compare with Shang Anren, a socialite with a wide range of connections. If she used some more tricks, it would really be beyond redemption. Do you really have a way? Ji Xiaoye gritted her teeth and looked up at Ling Han. Ling Han didn't need to lie to them. She just asked. After seeing Ling Han nod, she pulled Yi Huanyan in front of him and instructed. Talk to him. I can see that he really cares about you. Yi Huanyan still resisted. Xiao Yu, I have no problem with you staying with me as long as you want, but I'm afraid the people in the police station won't let me. I can't help you too much in this matter. Yen Yen, listen to me. You can only rely on him now. People should bow their heads when they should. Besides, Ling Han is not someone else. Isn't he the man you want to marry? Ji Xiaoye patted Yi Huanyan's hand. She hesitated for a while and looked up at Ling Han. Then I'll leave her to you. Yi Huanyan clenched her fingers. Although she didn't want to go with Ling Han, she knew that Ji Xiaoye was telling the truth. At the moment, she only hated that she had no power and couldn't even save herself. Jin Jianjiwen. On the way back, Yi Huanyan didn't say a word. She didn't know what to say. She also didn't know what Ling Han would say to her or what he planned to do to solve this matter. Lingling prepared some simple dishes early in the morning. After she set the table, she went back to her room and left the dining room to the two of them. What do you want to do? Yi Huanyan lowered her head and ate 2 mouthfuls. She couldn't help but look up and ask. Ling Han frowned. Eat first. The meal was eaten in an awkward manner. She had been in the detention center for a whole day. To be honest, the food in the detention center didn't taste good. Although she wasn't in a good mood, she couldn't stop eating after 2 mouthfuls. In the end, Yi Huanyan finished the bowl of rice in front of her without leaving a single grain of rice behind. She also drank more than half of the pork rib soup. She put down her chopsticks and subconsciously touched her belly. It was already bulging, and the dizziness she felt in the detention center had completely disappeared. Sure enough, she was hungry. Seeing that she was full, Ling Han also put down his chopsticks and wiped his mouth slowly. In fact, he didn't eat much. He basically watched Yi Huanyan eat. Can you say it now? Yi Huanyan took a deep breath and looked up at him. After the court files a case, there is a process of settlement out of court. No matter what the truth is, once it goes to court, it won't be good for you, so I think it should be settled out of court. Looking at this, Yi Huanyan thought that he had reached a consensus with Shang Anren. Although she was sullen, it didn't make her do anything. It was nothing more than taking a bad name in front of Shang Anren's fans. She didn't care. I have no objection, she said lightly. After this is over, you go back to the old house and live with Grandma for a few days. Even if Shang Anren agreed to withdraw the lawsuit, this matter would definitely ferment on the internet for a while. During this time, there was no way to guarantee that there wouldn't be extreme fans like Sun Yanhua's fans who came out to take revenge on Yi Huanyan, so it was natural for her to temporarily avoid the limelight. Okay. She nodded. Tomorrow afternoon, go to the hospital with me and apologize to Anren. This matter will be over. Hearing this, Yi Huanyan's subconscious nod suddenly stopped. She slowly looked up, her eyes full of surprise. Her voice was uncertain as she asked, "What did you just say?" Seeing her like this, Ling Han felt a little uncomfortable, but he maintained a calm expression and said in a deep voice, "As long as you apologize, this matter will be over." Don't you understand? Do you want to go to jail? Between apologizing and going to jail, any smart person would know which to choose. Besides, the collapse of the light frame was indeed Yi Huanyan's fault. You want me to apologize? Admit that I deliberately hurt people? Yi Huanyan's voice was faintly trembling. The surprise in her eyes had turned into disappointment, and it was getting stronger. You're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.